Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. As it's getting close to the end of the year, I thought it would be a good idea to go through some of the best videos of 2025. So this video is going to include the 10 best performing videos of the year. I know these kind of videos aren't for everyone, but I always get comments asking for more like this, as some of you like to sleep or study with these longer videos on in the background. Thank you so much for all of the kind words and support this year, and I'm really looking forward to making better videos next year. But without further ado, we can get into the first video, and this one is about some big blubbery boys. Pinnipeds are a very playful and inquisitive group of mammals, and there are 33 different species of them alive today. Some of them can be seen battling it out on cold windy beaches, others are forced to dodge polar bears on sea ice, and some are feared by penguins and humans alike. In today's video, we'll be travelling around the world taking a look at some of the most interesting species, as we'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest pinniped. Because pinnipeds are free to move around our oceans, there are a few rules that we need to go over, because just like birds, they sometimes get lost and end up in places where they don't really belong. To be featured in this video, the pinniped must be a resident to the continent, and I'll be ranking the animals based on their maximum weight in the wild. Without further ado, we can head over to our first location, and for the first time in a long time, we won't be heading to Antarctica first. Africa has its fair share of giant mammals, but the vast majority of them are found on land. If you look at the global distribution of all pinniped species, you'll notice that only some parts of Africa boast any pinniped species at all. The Cape fur seal is easily the most well-known and numerous species on the continent, but this mammal isn't only found in the waters around southern Africa. That's because the name Cape fur seal actually refers to a subspecies, and the other subspecies of this seal is found around the coasts of southern Australia. A fur seal's life is very rarely carefree, as there are predators both on the land and in the water that want to take a chunk out of you. In both Africa and Australia, they are targets for marine predators such as great white sharks and the arguably more terrifying orca. But on the shores of Africa, they also need to keep an eye out for lions and hyenas. The desert lions of the Skeleton Coast are known for their seal hunting tendencies, and this is a reaction to the scarcity of their normal prey in the region. In between dodging predators, they do have a little time to hunt, and they mostly target small fish, but in rare instances they'll even hunt sharks and seabirds. These mammals can be found in giant colonies and play a very important role in their ecosystem, but they aren't the only pinnipeds that can be found on the continent. Africa is sometimes visited by giant species from southern waters, but these animals rarely stay long and are often lost. Some sources claim that the Cape fur seal is the only resident pinniped in Africa, but there's another species on the northern coast that often goes under the radar. The Mediterranean monk seal has quite a scattered distribution today, but some of its last remaining strongholds are along the African coasts. As you might have guessed from my wording, they aren't exactly thriving in the wild, as there are only around 700 individuals across 4 isolated subpopulations. Their decline was of course caused by man, as it's thought that the Romans hunted them relentlessly, and in the 20th century they were targeted by fishermen as they damaged nets and stole fish. It's a real shame that we decimated their populations in the past, as they are incredibly intelligent and distinctive seals. They'll often rest and care for their young in caves that can only be accessed underwater, and they have been observed lifting rocks to look for their desired prey. This rare seal is also the largest seal that can be found in African waters, with a maximum weight of around 400 kilograms. This means that Africa slots in at number 7, and the Mediterranean monk seal can also be found in our next location. The coasts of Europe are home to a wide variety of seals, but there are also some freshwater subspecies which can be found in its giant lakes. The Saimaa ringed seal is a freshwater ringed seal subspecies, and it's endemic to Lake Saimaa in Finland. They spend most of their days feeding on European freshwater fish species such as perch and roach, but on land they need to look out for predators such as white-tailed eagles. Even though these freshwater seals are interesting oddities, they are still relatively small, and to find the larger species we'll have to head into the ocean. The harbour seal is one of the most common species that can be found around the continent, with around 100,000 of them being found in European waters. This species can also be found along the coasts of North America and Asia, and even though they have a giant population, they are still relatively small seals. The grey seal is another species that enjoys living in Europe's salt waters, with around 40% of all grey seals living around the UK. This seal's long face makes it appear almost like a dog, and I'm sure any divers that are lucky enough to have met one will also tell you that they act like dogs too. They are extremely inquisitive, and will often follow and approach divers to try and work them out. These water puppies are arguably the most adored species that can be found in Europe, but to find the larger species you'll have to head north. Iceland and the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard are home to a wide range of Arctic pinnipeds, with some of them having striking colorations and adaptations. The hooded seal has a wide range across the northern Atlantic Ocean, and it's known for both its blotchy black and grey coloration, and its inflatable sac which the males use to attract females and intimidate rivals. The bearded seal is one of the largest seals across the continent, but in my opinion this species is misnamed. Its beard is more like a mustache, and its large mustache helps it to find fish, clams and squid on the ocean floor. The largest pinniped in Europe also shares its waters with this distinguished seal, and they also have a mustache that can rival them. There are over 5,500 walruses that can be found in and around the Svalbard archipelago, and in this area they need to keep their eyes out for predators. This saying doesn't really work for the walrus as they famously have very bad eyesight, and instead they rely on their smell to sense danger. The polar bear is a master at hunting unsuspecting seals, and they'll even hunt walruses from time to time. Even though walruses will sometimes fight back using their tusks, in most cases polar bears are able to overpower them. In the water, they hunt in a very similar way to the bearded seals, hunting a wide range of animals on the ocean floor. This diet allows them to reach monstrous sizes, and they're easily the largest pinniped that can be found in European waters. The Atlantic walrus is generally smaller than its Pacific counterpart, with it reaching a maximum weight of around 1.5 metric tons. The Atlantic walrus's bulk means that Europe is fit for 6th place, and for our next section we'll be heading over to a neighbour. Because Asia is right next to Europe, it shares many of the same pinniped species, but there are a few that are absent from Europe altogether. In Lake Baikal, you'll find a very well-known freshwater seal in the Baikal Nerpa, and unlike the Saimaa ringed seal, it's a distinct species and not a subspecies. Lake Baikal is the deepest lake in the world, and it spends most of its time feeding on the fish and crustaceans that can be found in its depths. By living in a lake, their lives are a little more carefree as they don't have to worry about predatory marine mammals or sharks, but on land they are sometimes targeted by brown bears. This is part of the reason why they prefer to rest on the islands along the lake instead of on shore, but in the winter the solid ice means that they are more at risk. Thankfully, these seals have very healthy numbers in the wild, with an estimated population of around 80,000 to 100,000 individuals. The Japanese sea lion was a marine species that inhabited the waters around Japan and the Korean peninsula, but the last sighting of this animal was in 1974. They were overhunted for their skins and their blubber, and they were almost completely wiped out in the blink of an eye. It's tragic that these animals no longer swim in our oceans, but as we'll get to later on in the video, these aren't the only pinnipeds that have gone extinct in the past few hundred years. Today, one of the more common seals in the Far East is the spotted seal, but the harbour seal is again another common resident. In my opinion, the most beautiful seal in the world is the ribbon seal, with its black and white or brown and white pattern being matched by no other pinniped. There are also a few fur seals and sea lions that can be found along Asia's coasts, such as the Steller sea lion, which is the largest sea lion in the world. This mammal's numbers have been massively affected by overfishing in recent years, but thankfully in some parts of their range they are bouncing back. Adult males can weigh over 1.1 metric tons, which is over 100 kilograms heavier than the largest polar bear on record. Asia shares the Steller sea lion and many other pinnipeds with North America, as a wide range of species can be found along the coasts of the Bering Sea. The largest pinniped in Asia can also be found in North America, and it's a species that we've already taken a look at. The Pacific walrus lives a very similar life to its Atlantic counterpart, but it has a few physical differences. Pacific walruses tend to have longer tusks and thicker skulls, and of course they are a little bit larger. In the wild, the Pacific walrus can reach a maximum weight of around 2 metric tons, which means that Asia slots in at a close number 5. Once again, North America shares many pinniped species with both Europe and Asia, and just like these continents, it also has a few freshwater seals. The Iliamna lake seal is found in Alaska's largest body of freshwater, and it's one of only 2 freshwater harbor seal populations. The other population is found in the freshwater lakes of northern Quebec, meaning that North America is the only place where you can find freshwater harbor seals. Along the islands of North America, you can spot a few endemic species, with one of the most famous examples being the Hawaiian monk seal. This iconic pinniped is the only seal native to Hawaii, but unfortunately, just like the Mediterranean monk seal, it's also endangered. It's completely reliant on conservation, with a population of around 1,400 individuals in the wild. They've been affected by human encroachment, hunting, and fishing nets over the years, but thankfully today they are protected. These mammals appear to be full of character, as they've been witnessed interacting with other animals in strange ways. They'll sometimes cuddle up to sea turtles on beaches, and they have been known to get eels stuck in their noses from time to time. If you go back 100 years, then there was another monk seal on the other side of North America, but unfortunately today they are presumed extinct. The Caribbean monk seal was once pretty widespread along the east coast of southern North America and northern South America, but overhunting and overfishing led to their demise, and the last individual was spotted in Jamaica in 1952. It's impossible to talk about North American pinnipeds without mentioning the California sea lion, as it's the most common sea lion on the continent, being found along most of the west coast. This sea lion sometimes shares its habitat with the northern fur seal, which is another species that can be found in the far east of Asia. They can be found in giant colonies in a few different locations across their range, and they have an estimated population of around 1.3 million. This may sound like a lot, but it's nothing compared to their historic numbers, as we humans have ruthlessly targeted them for hundreds of years. They are the species that's being slaughtered in this now very well-known image, and an estimated 2.5 million of them were killed from 1786 to 1867. Unfortunately, their numbers are still declining across much of their range, and it's believed that overfishing may be part of the problem. To find the largest pinniped in North America, we'll have to stay on the west coast, as this is where you can find the northern elephant seal. This seal is called so because of its elephant-like proboscis, and it uses this to make strange sounding calls. The males of this species are many times the size of the females, and they will battle each other sometimes to the death for control of the beach. A high-ranking bull can have a harem of around 30 to 100 cows, and many of the bulls are willing to die for this prize. Because of their colossal size, they are only really targeted by great white sharks and orcas, and for these predators they would be a pretty substantial meal. The northern elephant seal can reach a maximum weight of around 2.3 metric tons, and this means that they dwarf even the largest walrus. For this reason, North America slots in at 4th place, and this mammal must be pretty intimidating to meet in the water. Now, one of the main reasons that I chose this topic was so that Antarctica didn't come in last place for once, but there's a reason why I haven't covered this topic sooner. The final 3 continents all have the same largest pinniped, but I've decided to rank them differently. The southern elephant seal is the largest pinniped in the world, and it's a resident of Antarctica, South America, and Oceania. Like I've done in previous videos in this series, I'll rank the final 3 continents based on other pinnipeds that can be found there, as well as the southern elephant seal, and that means that first we'll be heading to South America. Just like North America, South America also has a few pinniped species that can be found on its offshore islands, including the Galapagos fur seal and the Juan Fernandez fur seal. These 2 species are the smallest and second smallest fur seals in the world, and they both take advantage of the biodiverse reefs that surround the islands that they inhabit. Surprisingly, the Galapagos fur seal isn't the only pinniped that can be found on the shores of the Galapagos Islands, as the Galapagos sea lion also hunts in these rich waters. Just like the Galapagos fur seal, the Galapagos sea lion is the smallest of its kind, and it's believed to be the closest relative of the aforementioned California sea lion. Back on the mainland, you can find more fur seals in the South American fur seal, and you can also find the second largest sea lion in the world in the South American sea lion. This giant is highly sexually dimorphic, with males being over double the size of females, and having a visible mane and upturned snouts. If it wasn't for the southern elephant seal, the South American sea lion would be the largest pinniped on the continent, but the southern elephant seal shares its home with these mammals, and it really makes them look tiny. This species lives a very similar life to its northern cousin, but of course they get much larger. It's really quite difficult to fully comprehend their size, but the bulls are around 40% larger than the northern elephant seal bulls, and they're nearly twice the size of a male walrus, and 6 to 7 times larger than Kodiak and polar bears. Of course, the southern elephant seal will never meet these predators across their range, but surprisingly they're still targets for the most dominant marine predators. If they come across potential predators in the wild, then it's a good idea to dive, as they can reach depths of almost 2.4 kilometers. This means that your average elephant seal has seen things that we humans will likely never see, and even though they are relatively sluggish on land, it's a good idea to give them a wide berth. The southern elephant seal can reach a maximum weight of around 4 metric tons, but some experts believe that they can get even larger. This means that because of reasons that I explained earlier, South America slots in at 3rd place, and our next continent is another elephant seal hunting ground. Oceania isn't exactly known for its pinnipeds, but there are a few interesting species that can be found here. As I mentioned at the start of the video, the Afro-Australian fur seal inhabits Australian waters, but there's another fur seal species in the Australasian fur seal, which can also be found in New Zealand. Australia only has one endemic pinniped species, and it's one of the most beautiful sea lions in the world. The Australian sea lion is known for its relatively light and warm coloration, but unfortunately it's one of the rarest of its kind. This might have something to do with its reproduction, as they have one of the longest gestation periods of any mammal, with it lasting around 18 months. When the pups are large enough, they can take advantage of the diverse ecosystems around Australia's coasts, but of course these are very dangerous waters too. Further south in New Zealand, you can spot the glorious New Zealand sea lion, which takes the unwanted title of the rarest sea lion in the world, having an estimated population of around 10,000 individuals. This species is endemic to New Zealand, and it's one of the largest animals that can be found in and around the country. It's one of New Zealand's only native mammals, and it's one of the most distinctive of all sea lions. Females will often travel great distances inland to protect their pups, with some mothers being spotted 2 kilometers away from the ocean. Some of the penguins of New Zealand share this strange behaviour, as for most of their existence there were no land predators in New Zealand, meaning that it was a lot safer to head inland. So far, it's difficult to argue that Oceania should be placed higher than South America, but Oceania isn't only home to the southern elephant seal, which can be found on New Zealand's southern islands, but it's also home to the leopard seal. For a long time, leopard seals were considered to be visitors to New Zealand, but relatively recently they were reclassified as residents. These giant predators are easily the most intimidating pinnipeds on the planet, and tragically in one unfortunate case, one leopard seal did claim the life of a human. They appear to be completely fascinated with us, often forming bonds with divers and offering them penguins to eat. In the wild, they'll feed on pretty much anything that they can catch and overpower, with them being particularly fond of penguins and sometimes other pinnipeds. This allows them to reach a maximum weight of around 590 kilograms, which is around the same weight as a large male polar bear. This seal's presence along with the southern elephant seal means that Oceania slots in at 2nd place, and for our final section we'll be heading somewhere very cold. Antarctica is easily the continent with the most pinnipeds, and some of the seals that call these waters home can't be found anywhere else in the world. The crab-eater seal has a very misleading name as they don't actually eat crabs, as instead they mostly feed on krill, with it making up around 90% of their diets. It has specialised teeth that allow it to filter krill from the water, and the aforementioned leopard seal also shares this adaptation. The crab-eater seal is pretty large, reaching lengths of around 2 meters, but arguably what's more impressive is their population. It's the most abundant seal species in the world, and it's extremely hard to estimate exactly how many of them there are. It's believed that there are anywhere from 15 to 75 million of them on the planet today, so it's possible that they could have a similar population to the country of Thailand. On the other hand of the scale, you have the Ross seal, which is the rarest and least well known of all the Antarctic seals. On many of the Antarctic islands, you'll find fur seals chilling with king penguins, and nearer the Antarctic mainland, you can spot the feisty Weddell seal. The Weddell seal uses fast ice environments for extra protection from predators, as they'll often carve holes in the ice to breathe from, and this means that orcas are unable to get to them as there is too much solid ice in the way. Of course, Antarctica is also home to the giant southern elephant seal and the leopard seal, and its collection of various different giant seals means that it easily takes the top spot. So finally, there's a video for all of you that complain that Antarctica always comes in at last place, and I'm sure that I'll come up with another one in the future. Orcas are easily the most dominant predators in our oceans, and it almost seems as though hunting is too easy for them. They'll destroy their closest competitors, and they'll even eliminate the largest animal to have ever lived, and we can count ourselves lucky that they mostly choose to leave us alone. Only the cruelty of captivity can turn them into human killers, but unfortunately for a massive group of marine mammals, they are on the menu. It almost seems unfair for other animals to have to face these formidable predators, but surprisingly in some cases, marine mammals fight back or manage to outsmart orcas. In today's video, we'll be going through just a few of the most impressive examples, and we'll start off with the most famous one. Humpback whales are among the most distinctive and fascinating of their kind, and they have a few habits and behaviours that set them apart from other baleen whales. They are renowned for their beautiful complex calls, and their active hunting and breaching behaviours make them favourites of whale watchers and wildlife enthusiasts. These giants are mostly harmless, but you need to be cautious around them, as people have been accidentally swallowed and released, and others have tragically lost their lives after a breaching humpback whale landed on their boat. Even though the humpback is a giant with a maximum weight of around 40 metric tons, it's nothing compared to the blue whale, which can reach an estimated 200 metric tons. Despite this substantial difference in weight, orcas have a much easier time hunting blue whales than they do humpback whales. When orcas hunt humpbacks, they usually only target their young, as a fully grown humpback can cause some serious damage. The main reason behind why humpbacks are more dangerous than other whales is their anatomy, as they have relatively long pectoral fins and a powerful tail and wide fluke. This means that they can swipe at potential predators pretty effectively, and this is why most orcas choose to leave the adults alone. I think it's fair to say that a humpback could take down an orca in the right situation, but so far there hasn't been a confirmed case where a humpback whale successfully eliminated an orca. For some humpback whales, simply defending themselves against orcas isn't enough, as in a few cases, humpbacks have been witnessed reacting to orca calls by ambushing them and disrupting their hunts. Back in 2022, off the coast of Canada, a humpback whale was witnessed ambushing a pod of 9 orcas, and eventually he was successful in driving them off. Back in 2016, while filming Frozen Planet in Antarctica, marine ecologist Robert Pittman witnessed 2 humpbacks saving a Weddell seal from orcas. After the orcas were driven off, they started to hunt a crab-eater seal that was on a small piece of ice, and they were using the wave-washing technique to try and dislodge the seal. To the amazement of the people watching on, the humpbacks charged again to save a second seal, and by slapping the water and acting aggressively, they once again drove off the orcas. This incredible behaviour is rarely seen in the animal kingdom, and there are a surprisingly high number of cases involving humpback whales around the globe. There are a few theories behind why humpback whales put themselves in danger in this way, but we'll never know the real answer until we figure out a way to communicate with these complex animals. Some experts suggest that because humpbacks that encounter orcas have stressful encounters with them, whenever they encounter them or even hear them, they spring into action to drive them away. This would also be an effective way to ensure the survival of your species, as it means that mother humpbacks and their young that are in the area would be safe. Others suggest that it's a reaction to being potentially hunted, as instead of running, they choose to charge the orcas to prove that they aren't to be messed with. The problem with this second theory is the fact that they have appeared to help multiple animals even once the danger has gone away, and this leads us to our final and my personal favourite theory. Whales are extremely complex and caring animals, and they have many behaviours that we are still yet to fully understand. It's possible that the humpbacks are capable of feeling empathy, and might choose to help their fellow marine mammals as they don't want to see and hear them suffer. There is even more evidence to support this final theory, as not only will they help other marine mammals that are being hunted by orcas, but they'll also help other whales that have been caught in fishing gear. These displays of compassion should not be overlooked, and if you're a marine mammal and you hear the sound of orcas approaching in the distance, it would be a good idea to find your nearest humpback. There are two species of pilot whale alive today, the long-finned pilot whale and the short-finned pilot whale. These cetaceans are known for their deep diving capabilities, as they can dive as deep as 600 meters in search of their desired prey, which usually comes in the form of squid. Both species are pretty large for oceanic dolphins, with their size only being bested by the mighty orca. I was lucky enough to have seen these animals resting off of the coast of the Canary Islands, and it was interesting to see how calm and at peace they appeared to be. This was why I was surprised to find out how aggressive they can be in certain situations, as they are one of only a few animals that are capable of scaring off orcas. Now, there are multiple YouTube videos claiming that pilot whales could match orcas if they were to come to blows, but this is a bit of an exaggeration, and in some cases, orcas will successfully hunt them. Despite this, there have been a few documented instances where pilot whales have appeared to scare off orcas in their area, and it's happened quite a few times off the coast of Iceland. Now, the orcas that visit the waters around Iceland aren't pushovers, with the infamous Tilikum being stolen from this area back in 1983. The Icelandic Orca Project documents many of the strange interactions that orcas have around Iceland, and back in 2015, marine mammal scientist Philippa Samara witnessed a group of pilot whales scaring off a pod of orcas. The team were eavesdropping on a group of nearby orcas, when suddenly they heard a different frequency of squeals and whistles in the distance. When this happened, the orcas went silent, and when the pilot whales came into view, the orcas appeared to turn and swim off in the opposite direction. Surprisingly, this wasn't a standalone case, as Philippa and her team documented at least 20 other similar instances. At first, this might seem strange as the orcas could easily defeat the smaller pilot whales, but it seems as though the fight just isn't worth their time. There are a few theories behind why orcas flee when encountered by pilot whales, but despite what some sources claim, it's unlikely that orcas fear them. Instead, it's likely that the orcas see the pilot whales as a nuisance, and they are unable to effectively hunt with the pilot whales mobbing them. When the pilot whales charge, they usually have numbers on their side, which would make it harder for the orcas to pick them off or fight back. Experts are still trying to understand more about these interactions, but I think it's fair to say that the pilot whales are extremely brave for doing what they do. The Steller sea lion is the largest species of sea lion in the world, with some males weighing over a metric ton. Despite this, they are still pretty screwed if they come face to face with an orca in the wild, and it would be a good idea to try and leave the water the first time an orca is detected. Because the males are so large and have a pretty nasty bite, they can be tricky animals to hunt, and some brave individuals have found a way to make hunting them even harder. Being a sea lion can be pretty terrifying at times, because not only do you have to look out for orcas, as sharks would love to take a bite out of you too. In places such as South Africa and Australia, sea lions have been witnessed engaging in mobbing behaviour, which is where a group of sea lions follow the shark to disrupt their hunts. Mobbing behaviour means that the predators lose the element of surprise, and it makes picking out a target almost impossible. Of course, sea lions aren't the only animals to use this technique, as it's pretty common in the bird world. This is why when you see a large bird of prey in the wild, it's often being harassed by much smaller birds, and if done right, it's pretty effective. Now, mobbing a great white shark is a lot easier than mobbing an orca, as they are far more intelligent and usually work together while hunting. This is why mobbing behaviour between Steller sea lions and orcas is rare, but it's one way that they can work together to try and outsmart the orcas. This technique is only really effective close to land as it offers the sea lions an escape route, and in open waters it would be easier for the orcas to outmaneuver the mobbing sea lions. To even attempt to do this and put yourself in danger, you must be extremely brave. And similar behaviours have been witnessed with the South American sea lions, which are actually the second largest species. So if you're a sea lion, the best thing that you can do when you meet an orca is to exit the water. But if you're feeling brave, jumping back in the water might help to save your friends. The sperm whale is more than a match for an orca, with the largest males capable of reaching weights of around 57 metric tons. As well as having size on their side, they also have large teeth, but they aren't really designed for biting large mammals such as orcas. Sperm whales head into the depths to hunt giant squid, and their teeth are best suited for snaring these soft-bodied giants. This means that biting might not be the best plan when they come face to face with orcas, but thankfully sperm whales have a few other strategies that are often effective. When they attack, these predators will mostly target the young and females, so the males tend to protect the vulnerable members of the group by creating a defensive rosette. If this doesn't work, they will use their incredibly loud clicks to deter the orcas, and these clicks are primarily used for echolocation to detect giant squid in the depths. At first, this might not seem like much of a deterrent, but it's believed that if you get close enough underwater, these clicks would be able to kill a human. They are powerful enough to burst eardrums and possibly rupture internal organs, but thankfully there is no record of anybody dying in this way. If all of these strategies fail to deter orcas, then they have one more party trick up their sleeve, and that's to completely empty their bowels in the worst way that they can. In March of last year, off the coast of Western Australia, a pod of sperm whales were being pursued by around 30 orcas. This was when scientists witnessed a big dark bubble appear in the water, and it soon became clear that at least one of the sperm whales had defecated in the water. The sperm whale didn't do this because it was terrified, as actually it's a defensive behaviour known as defensive defecation. This not only potentially puts the attackers off their food with the stench, but it also produces a cloud in the water that confuses the orcas and allows them to escape. Sperm whales can dive far deeper than orcas and almost all other mammals, so this distraction is all they need to escape. Because of the sperm whale's diet, their poop can be a darkish red colour, and at first, in the case off of the coast of Western Australia, the scientists thought the poop was blood. Soon after the defensive defecation, the orcas quickly decided to leave, and it's almost as if they decided that it would be too much effort to continue to hunt them. As we've been over in the previous stories, you don't need to go into battle to defeat or escape from orcas, as instead all you need to do is convince them that you're going to be too much hassle to hunt. Pooping yourself is one of the most creative ways to convince predators that you're not worth hunting, so I guess it makes sense that the sperm whale has the largest brain in the animal kingdom. Because walruses are such substantial animals with some males weighing over 2 metric tons, only 2 other animals apart from man are known to hunt them on a regular basis: the polar bear and, if you haven't guessed already, the orca. Even though both of these predators can be successful when hunting them, they are far from an easy meal. Most of the time, polar bears will charge large groups of walruses on land, and then they will usually eat the animals that have died from the resulting stampede. The males will often fight back against the bears with their tusks, and their thick blubber makes it extremely difficult for the bears to land a killer blow. Because orcas are so much larger, defeating a walrus is relatively easy for them, but the larger males can cause problems. Walruses mostly forage on the ocean floor in relatively shallow areas, so if they detect that orcas are nearby, then they can often escape to the safety of land or ice. If this fails, they'll use their tusks to attack the predators, and this can result in a pretty nasty injury for the orcas. There is anecdotal evidence of a walrus impaling an orca, resulting in both animals dying, but this would have to be an extremely lucky jab for the walrus. Because the walrus is such a tricky and risky animal to target, they still make up a relatively small percentage of both the polar bears and the orcas' diets. They are often viewed as quite clumsy and vulnerable animals, but they've had a few interactions with humans in the past that have proved that they are not to be messed with. In 2019, a walrus capsized a scientific vessel that was approaching an Arctic shoreline, but thankfully the whole crew survived the ordeal. There have been a few stories in the early 1900s where people were killed after their boats were capsized by walruses, but one of the most recent fatal incidents once again occurred in captivity. Captivity seems to have a strange effect on marine mammals, with many of them losing their fear of humans or becoming more violent. Back in 2016, in a wildlife park in eastern China, a tourist and a zookeeper were drowned by a walrus. The tourist had been taking selfies with the walrus when it playfully grabbed him from behind, and then it held him underwater until he drowned. The trainer tried to intervene, but there was little that he could do as the walrus weighed 1.5 tons, and in the end both the tourist and the trainer died. This tragic case, along with evidence from hunters and kayakers, shows us just how dangerous these animals can be when they feel threatened, and this might be part of the reason why most of the time orcas choose to hunt easier prey. So the walrus joins the shortlist of animals that can deter these magnificent predators, but if they really wanted to take the risk, then the orcas would destroy them. Amphibians are some of the strangest animals on this planet, and they have many skills and abilities that are hard to comprehend. They are able to absorb toxins and become toxic themselves, and they can even regrow lost limbs and parts of their brains. Unfortunately, many amphibians are in real peril today, as they are the most threatened class of vertebrates, with nearly 41% of all amphibian species being threatened with extinction. The reason behind this dramatic loss of amphibians is mostly human related, but they are also suffering from diseases and parasitic fungus. It's important that we admire the species that we still have, and hopefully in the near future experts will find a way to battle the threats that the world's amphibians are facing, and we won't have to worry about them disappearing for good. In today's video, I'll be focusing on some of the weirdest and most distinctive amphibians in the world, as I'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by their largest amphibian. I'll be ranking these creatures based on their maximum weight, as of course some amphibians are long and slender, and others are thick and blob-like. Without further ado, we can travel over to our first continent, and I doubt anyone will be surprised by which continent comes in at number 7. Antarctica has no native terrestrial mammals, reptiles or amphibians, so once again they come in at a disappointing last place in this video. It's simply too cold for amphibians to thrive here, and this is despite the fact that some amphibians can deal with the cold a lot better than we can. Quite a few different species of reptiles and amphibians can totally freeze before thawing and coming back to life, and few species do it better than the Siberian salamander. They can survive deep freezes with temperatures dipping below -45 degrees Celsius, and they have been known to freeze for years in permafrost before thawing and walking away. If you go back over 200 million years, there were over 2-meter giant amphibians that would roam across Antarctica's wetlands, but unfortunately these creatures perished a long time ago. For this reason, Antarctica slots in at number 7, but I'm sure that you saw this coming before you clicked on the video. Oceania is known for its unique, weird and wonderful creatures, and even though it's home to a wide range of endemic amphibians, they tend to be smaller than the amphibians from other continents. What they lack in size, they make up for in quirkiness, as there are quite a few frogs in Oceania that really stand out. Australia is mostly dominated by frogs, with around 230 different species being found here, with around 93% of them being endemic. The turtle frogs are arguably the strangest looking frogs in the world, and the Brave Wilderness team managed to find one of these creatures and film it in December of 2023. The crucifix toad may win the award for the cutest and best shaped frog in the world, as it usually resembles a small ball or cube, and they seem to have a clueless or mortified expression. These tiny frogs may be cute, but they don't win the award for the best named frog in Australia, because this award would go to the giant pobblebonk frog, or the dumpy tree frog. The pouched frog keeps the Australian tradition of keeping your young in some kind of pouch, as it has pockets on its hips where it can carry its tadpoles. This tadpole carrying behaviour isn't unique to the pouched frog, as there are a few other species that have similar techniques, and there are some other more disturbing tadpole related behaviours that we'll get to a little later on in the video. The magnificent tree frog lives up to its name, and it seems to be wearing a fancy hat which only adds to its magnificent appearance. This hat is actually part of their bodies, and it contains toxins that are useful for stopping snakes from eating them. Most of Australia's frogs are usually greenish coloured tree frogs, but there are a few striking species that really stand out and tell potential predators that they're not to be messed with. Unfortunately, Australia also has a few invasive amphibians such as the smooth newt and the cane toad that threaten native species, with the cane toad being one of the most infamous invasive species in the world. This amphibian was introduced to control pest numbers on sugarcane plantations, but they have caused a massive decline in native predator populations, as their toxins can kill most reptiles and mammals that choose to eat them. Today it's estimated that there are around 200 million cane toads in Australia, and currently they are almost impossible to control. Oceania is made up of many different island nations of different sizes, but some of these island nations have no native amphibians at all, or their amphibian species are relatively small. New Guinea is home to a few species that are very similar in size to the largest amphibians in Australia, and these species are usually closely related to the Australian species. Unfortunately, the final part of this section is a bit of an anticlimax, because the largest amphibians in Oceania all reach a similar size. The title is still disputed, but it's believed that the white-lipped tree frog is the largest, with a max weight of around 70 grams, and a total body length of around 15 centimeters. These Kermit-looking frogs mean that Oceania slots in at number 6, and for our next section we'll be heading over to the other side of the world. The amphibians of Europe can mostly be split into 4 different groups: frogs, newts, toads, and salamanders. Because Europe is connected to Asia, they share many different amphibian species, but there are quite a few endemic species here too. Along some forest streams you can find striking salamanders such as fire salamanders and Lycian salamanders, but in some darker, colder places there is no need for colour at all. The olm is a fully aquatic salamander that can be found in the caves on the coast of the northeastern Adriatic, and because it has no need for eyes, it is completely blind. Its other senses, such as its hearing and smell, are heightened, and it uses these senses to help it feed on small crustaceans and snails. It does have a black subspecies which is darker and has more developed eyes, and this could be a result of living in a habitat with more light. In some caves where light is dim but still present, you can find long, slender cave salamanders, and most of these creatures have evolved large eyes to help them spot prey in low light conditions. Above ground there is a wide variety of different salamanders in the form of newts, and these creatures have a few different techniques to avoid predation. Most newts are toxic, and they do their best to tell predators this by being very colourful, and this is called aposematic coloration, and it's designed to make them stand out and look dangerous instead of blending in. The Iberian ribbed newt has a rather extreme way to protect itself from predators, as it has some useful weapons hidden within its body. When they are attacked by a predator, this newt will push its sharp ribs through the sides of its body, and this can stop the predator from swallowing it or even injure the attacker. The great crested newt has a wide range across northern and central Europe, and it's named after the crests on the breeding males. They typically inhabit heavily vegetated waters, and because of their relatively large size, they usually dominate other newts in their ecosystem. Just like Australia, Europe is home to a wide variety of frogs, but the frogs in Europe are nowhere near as colourful. Most of the frogs are a brown or green colour, and this is because they heavily rely on camouflage to avoid predators such as grass snakes. There are a few different tree frog species that can be found here, but because of the cold climate they are able to freeze and thaw. Because the frogs in Europe aren't as large as some of the others around the world, this means that they could easily be dominated by outside invaders. This is exactly what's been happening in some parts of the continent, as the American bullfrog has started to take over and dominate the native species. These frogs were introduced as pets and as a food item, but once they make it into the wild, there's almost nothing that can be done to stop them. As long as they can avoid some larger native predators, then they have nothing to fear, and they have proven to be very hard to control. There are a few different funky looking toads on the continent, but strangely the most boring looking toad is the largest amphibian in Europe. The European toad can be found in parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa, and it's known for its adaptability. It can be found in a wide range of habitats, including drier areas away from water sources. This ability to live away from water means that they are able to take advantage of some habitats that other amphibians cannot, and it's currently the 4th most common amphibian in Europe. The European toad can reach a maximum length of around 18 centimeters, and it can reach a maximum weight of around 90 grams. This might not seem very impressive compared to other places around the world, but it slots Europe in at number 5. North America seems to have an almost endless list of weird and wonderful salamanders, with over 300 species being found on the continent. Many of these species are known for their beautiful coloration, which is rarely matched by other animal groups, and some are known to interbreed with one another. Like Europe, it has a few aquatic blind cave salamanders, and there are some snake-like salamanders that live above ground in wetlands in the southeastern US. There are similarly looking aquatic salamanders that are given the endearing names of water dogs and mud puppies, but these creatures are usually much smaller than the amphiumas, which can measure over a meter long. In Canada, you can also find some hardy species that have the ability to freeze and thaw. And on the western coast of Canada and the US, you can find one of the most toxic amphibians in North America. The rough-skinned newt is highly toxic, and it's even claimed the lives of some humans. In 1979, a 29-year-old man from Oregon decided to ingest one of these creatures, and later he paid the price with his life. Further south in Mexico, you can find one of the most loved and adored amphibians in the world, but it's possible that they may have already disappeared in the wild altogether. Axolotls were once only found in one lake in Mexico City, but today they can be found in the homes of millions around the world. They may be one of the few animals that only exist in captivity, as there are only an estimated 50 to 1,000 left in the wild, but they are rarely, if ever, spotted in their natural habitat. Their demise is all down to pollution, habitat loss, and invasive species, as many predatory fish have been introduced into their habitat over the years. They are true masters of regeneration, and they are often studied by scientists because of their ability to regrow limbs, parts of their spinal cord, and even their brains and hearts. The largest amphibian in North America can look very similar to the axolotl in the early stages of their lives, but when they mature, they grow much larger. The hellbender is a giant salamander that's endemic to the United States, and they are typically found in fast-flowing, well-oxygenated streams. In the wild, they can live up to 50 years old, and during their lifetimes, they rarely move from their favourite spots. They have a territory less than a square mile, and individuals are often found under the same rock year after year. Unfortunately, today the hellbender is listed as vulnerable, as they are very sensitive to changes in their environment. Like many other amphibians, they are known as an indicator species, because they can only be found in fresh, clean, unpolluted waters. Their presence is an indicator that the ecosystem is healthy, and they soon perish in polluted waters as they breathe through their skin. In the wild, they mostly target small fish, crustaceans, and worms, and this protein-rich diet helps them to reach some pretty impressive sizes. The hellbender reaches a maximum length of around 75 centimeters, and they can weigh in at around 2.5 kilograms. This means that the hellbender and North America slot in at number 4, and for our next section we'll be heading south. South America is the continent with the most amphibian species, with Brazil having over 1,000 species on its own. The amphibians in this region are known for their toxicity and their striking looks, and this is definitely the case for the many species of poison dart frogs. There are over 170 different species of dart frog, and they are among the most colourful creatures in the world. Their aposematic coloration can differ greatly from species to species, and we are still discovering new dart frogs to this day. The most toxic member of this family is the golden poison frog, with their toxins being so deadly that one frog could kill around 10 to 20 men. Poison dart frogs get their toxins through the beetles and other insects that they eat, and this means that captive specimens that are fed fruit flies are not toxic at all. Like North America, South America is also home to a few different worm-like amphibians that are rarely seen, but believe it or not, they are not the strangest amphibians on the continent. The South American horned frogs go by the common name of Pac-Man frogs, and this is because their heads make up the majority of their bodies, and they possess giant Pac-Man-like mouths. They spend the majority of their lives waiting for prey to walk by, and they will feed on pretty much anything that will fit into their cavernous mouths. Brazil is home to one of the only vegetarian frogs that mostly feeds on fruits, and it's also home to a venomous frog that headbutts its victims with its spiked skull. There's one South American toad that haunts the nightmares of many innocent people around the world, and this is all because of the way that it looks after its young. The Suriname toad looks like a toad that's been run over by a truck, but its shape and coloration helps it to blend into its environment. After mating, eggs from the female are transferred onto her back, and they are eventually absorbed into the skin. After a while, the eggs sink deeper and deeper, and eventually the young hatch and escape through holes on the female's back. This seems to trigger a guttural reaction in most people, but it's still fascinating nonetheless. The smoky tree frog is one of the largest species that can be found on the forest floor, but these frogs are dwarfed by some of the species that can be found in the large lakes of Chile. The helmeted water toad is a rare giant frog that can be both brown and green in colour, and they are distant relatives of the long-extinct Antarctican amphibians. They are known for being quite aggressive, and they will feed on pretty much anything that they can fit into their mouths, and this includes their own kind. This voracious appetite is one of the main reasons why they are the largest amphibian in South America, with a max length of around 35 centimeters and a maximum weight of around 3 kilograms. The helmeted water toad and South America are fit for number 3 on this list, and next up we'll be heading over to the land of the giant mammals. Africa's amphibians may not be the largest in the world, but they are definitely some of the strangest. The hairy frog or horror frog is famous for its hair-like structures on the breeding males, but apart from this they are pretty normal frogs. The desert rain frog, like the crucifix toad, is loved because of its adorable appearance and body shape, and their high-pitched squeak only adds to their cuteness. Madagascar is home to many endemic animals that fascinate many of us around the world, so it only makes sense that some pretty extraordinary amphibians can also be found here. The aptly named tomato frog looks exactly how you'd expect, and it has a few colourful frogs that look very similar to the poison dart frogs of South America. Back on the mainland you can find some of the heftiest bullfrogs in the world, and most small creatures do their best to avoid them. The African bullfrog can weigh almost 1.5 kilograms, and they are known for their aggression and their fights during the mating season. They are one of the few species of frogs that have teeth, and they mostly use these for fighting as they swallow their prey whole. Further north, near the waterfalls of Equatorial Guinea and Cameroon, you can find the largest frog in the world, but despite their size, they are quite hard to track down. The Goliath frog is found over a very small region of Africa, and it's currently listed as endangered. In the wild, they are hunted as a food source, and they are also illegally collected for the pet trade. Very few people would have the space and resources needed to ethically keep one of these giants, but as they're from a relatively poor area, you can understand the motivation of the local people. Like most amphibians, they will feed on the majority of creatures that they can fit into their mouths, but this species also feeds on plant matter. In the wild, they can live up to 15 years, and over their lifetime they can reach some pretty impressive sizes. The Goliath frog can reach a maximum weight of around 3.3 kilograms, and they reach a maximum length of around 35 centimeters. This means that Africa slots in at a respectable number 2, but the Goliath frog is still dwarfed by the largest group of amphibians in the world. Asia is home to many frogs with interesting abilities, and some of them were only discovered relatively recently. Wallace's flying frog can be found in Indonesia, and as you might be able to guess by its name, it's able to glide using the large webbing between its fingers and toes. The purple frog looks more like a little forest gremlin than a frog, and it was only first described in 2003. This is because they spend the vast majority of their lives underground, only surfacing during the monsoon. The Indian bullfrog may not be as aggressive or intimidating as the African bullfrog, but they make up for this with their colour. During the mating season, the males are a bright yellow or green colour, and this contrasts greatly with the bright blue on the sacs on their necks. Even though these frogs are relatively large, they could still fall prey to the largest amphibians in Asia if they met, as some of them are as long as a man is tall. There are a few different species of giant Asian salamander, with the Japanese giant salamander being one of the most recognizable. The Japanese giant salamander can be found on Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu, and in their freshwater habitats they fear no predator. They seem to prefer clear, fast-moving streams, and in these waters they hunt fish, crustaceans, and other amphibians. They are mostly nocturnal, and they play an important role in Japanese culture and folklore, inspiring many legends and stories over the years. In China, you can find some of its closest relatives, with the South China giant salamander being the largest. These giants are the true largest amphibians in the world, reaching a maximum weight of around 60 kilograms and a maximum length of around 1.8 meters. Unfortunately, images and footage of these creatures are very hard to come by, as they are currently listed as critically endangered, and some believe that they are extinct in the wild. Unfortunately, like many of the other giant salamanders, they are used in traditional Chinese medicine, and they have been criminally over-harvested over the years. Even though they are the largest amphibians in the world, their story is still a sad one, and hopefully the other giant salamanders will not meet the same fate. Our planet is home to many fearless and formidable predators, but strangely some of these animals have never killed or even attacked humans. Some animals are so specialised that they will only choose to hunt a few different prey animals, whereas others are naturally shy and skittish and choose to avoid potential threats. Of course, there are many other complicated reasons why some apex predators will not hunt or attack humans in the wild, and I'll be trying to go through all of them today. In today's video, I'll be covering some of the most famous examples of top predators that don't kill humans, and we'll start off with one of the most distinctive big cats in the world. The snow leopard can be found in the mountain ranges of Central Asia, but it's not exactly the easiest animal to find. Sightings of wild snow leopards are extremely rare, and this is because of their incredible camouflage and their elusive nature. They can be extremely hard to spot even when they're right in front of you, and this ability to blend in helps them to get within a few meters of their prey. Even though this beautiful cat is called a leopard, it's more closely related to tigers than it is to leopards, and just like tigers, they can survive in colder, harsher conditions than the other big cats. They will feed on almost all animals in their ecosystem, and because large animals are rarely seen in remote mountains, they will risk everything to secure a kill. The majority of their diet is made up of large sheep and goats, and these animals are also true masters of their harsh, unforgiving habitats. They are renowned for their balance and their ability to move at speed across uneven, steep terrain, but these abilities sometimes aren't enough to escape the clutches of the snow leopard. Despite the fact that snow leopards are among the deadliest mountain predators alive today, they are still threatened with extinction. They are currently listed as vulnerable, as it's estimated that there are fewer than 10,000 of these cats left in the wild. Most of the reasons behind this are human-related, as they are affected by habitat loss, poaching, and human-wildlife conflict. Their skins still demand a high price, and poachers will risk years behind bars to trap and shoot snow leopards. Most of the demand for the furs comes from Russia, China, and Kazakhstan, and if this wasn't enough, their body parts are also used in traditional Chinese medicine. Many of the livestock animals in their region are very similar to their natural prey, so they will commonly hunt the livestock, leading to conflict. Of course, it's not the snow leopard's fault, as they are simply doing what they have been doing their whole lives, but farmers will often illegally retaliate in response to loss of livestock. Even when snow leopards are cornered by humans, they will always choose to flee, and this is why there has never been a verified snow leopard attack on a human. Out of all the big cats, they are the least aggressive towards humans, and this is despite the fact that they could easily take us down. One of the largest snow leopards on record weighed a whopping 75 kilograms, and this is around 15 kilograms heavier than the average weight of a man in the area in which it's found. They are also extremely stocky and powerful cats, and their camouflage and stealth would mean that it would be easy for them to creep up on humans. It seems as though the snow leopard chooses to avoid humans, as they would much rather target more traditional prey, and I'm sure the rampant poaching has only increased their fear of humans over the years. Sharks are arguably the animals that we fear the most, and this is despite the fact that they only claim the lives of around 10 people a year. Even though fatal attacks are rare, it's hard not to think of them when you're swimming in the ocean, and I can confirm that the thought of sharks entered my mind when I was snorkeling in Mauritius recently. Of course, some shark species are more likely to attack humans than others, and some shark species are completely harmless. Two of the largest sharks in the world may look menacing, but they are interested in smaller creatures. And some of the most intimidating sharks are really gentle giants if you leave them alone. Sand tiger sharks go by quite a few different names depending on where you are from, and one of their most interesting features are their rows of teeth spilling out of their mouths. They can be found in temperate and subtropical waters worldwide, and strangely they are a popular shark with divers. At first, you may assume that an over 3-meter shark would be the last thing that a diver would want to run into, but despite their fearsome appearance, they are known for being placid and slow-moving. They are one of the most common large sharks that can be found in aquariums, and this is due to their hardiness and the fact that they adapt very well to living in captivity. It's much harder to find these predators in the wild, because like many other shark species around the world, they are currently threatened with extinction. They are currently listed as critically endangered, and there are quite a few human-related factors behind this. They are hunted for their fins around the world because of the demand from China for shark fin soup, and other body parts are used in cosmetic products such as lipstick. They are also sometimes killed by fishermen because of competition, as sand tiger sharks feed almost exclusively on fish, crustaceans, and squid. They also fall victim to swimming nets near popular beaches, and this has a massive effect on their numbers as they have a relatively low reproductive rate. The sand tiger shark has never had any confirmed fatal attacks on humans, but they have attacked people in the past. According to the Florida Museum, there have been at least 36 unprovoked, non-fatal attacks, and a fully grown sand tiger shark can really cause some damage. Thankfully, we humans are very different to their usual prey, and they have evolved to hunt much smaller and softer animals. It can be quite terrifying to see any large sharks when you're swimming in the ocean, but the vast majority of fatal attacks are carried out by just 3 species: the bull shark, the tiger shark, and the great white shark. These sharks tend to hunt larger prey that are nearer the size of an average human, and they have teeth that are designed to tear off large chunks of flesh. The sand tiger shark, on the other hand, has teeth that are better suited to hang on to slippery prey, and they are too thin to tear off large chunks of flesh from mammalian prey. So thankfully, this giant shark is mostly a gentle giant, but you should still observe them from a safe distance. Despite what some people believe, the cheetah is not a big cat, but they are among the largest cats in the world. Technically, big cats are only cats that are in the genus Panthera, and the cheetah is in a different genus altogether, and it's the only living member in this genus. Famously, it's the fastest land animal on this planet, reaching a peak speed of around 65 miles per hour. This speed allows them to hunt many animals that the larger, bulkier predators in Africa are unable to, but this speed comes at a cost. Because of their lighter frame, they are forced to give up many of their kills, and this usually means that they are in a rush to eat whenever they make a kill. They usually target gazelles and antelope, and they have a hunting success rate of around 40 to 50%. Sometimes cheetahs will form small groups, and this means that they can hunt larger, more dangerous prey such as wildebeest. Even though they may not seem as fearsome as other large African predators such as lions, leopards, and spotted hyenas, they are still formidable predators and deserve to be respected. It's not an easy feat to take down a fully grown wildebeest, and most people will agree that they could easily take down children. If they have numbers on their side, they could even take down adults, but thankfully this has never happened since records began. Sometimes cheetahs will attack humans in captivity, but there has never been a recorded fatal cheetah attack on a human in the wild. Cheetahs will defend themselves if cornered or if they feel like their cubs are in danger, but in most cases, if you leave them alone, then they will leave you alone. Attacking a human is a big risk for a cheetah, and if they get injured, they will likely starve to death. Cheetahs deal with most conflicts with other predators by fleeing, and this is usually their response to humans approaching them too. If you find yourself alone in the African wilderness, then the cheetah is the least of your worries, as there are plenty of herbivores that are a much bigger danger to your life. Thankfully, they only seem to turn on humans in captivity, even though they are more than capable of running down humans. The wolverine is the largest land-dwelling member of the mustelid family, and like other mustelids, it's known for its power relative to its size. It's capable of taking down animals many times its own size, but most of the time it chooses to feed on animals that have died of natural causes or that have been killed by other predators. They can be found across a large area of the northern hemisphere, and they often share their habitats with some of the deadliest animals on this planet. They are known for having an incredible sense of smell, and they use this ability to avoid other predators in their area and to find dead animals under thick snow. Even though the wolverine's diet is mostly made up of carrion, they will sometimes hunt for food, and they are capable of targeting one of the largest animals in their ecosystem. The moose is the largest member of the deer family, and only the deadliest predators will target them. As I've covered in a recent video, the wolverine is capable of taking down weak or young moose, and this is an incredible feat as the moose is so much larger than them. If a predator is capable of taking down an animal as large and powerful as a moose, then they are more than capable of killing a human, but thankfully this has never happened in the wild. Wolverines are known for being aggressive and territorial, and in captivity they can be quite hard to control. In the wild, there have been no verified attacks on humans, and this is mostly due to their nature and their ability to avoid other animals if they wish to. Their sense of smell means that it's easy for them to sense humans before they get too close, and even though they will fight some predators over food, they mostly try to avoid other dangerous animals because of the risk. Wolves, bears and cougars are known to hunt these hardy animals, so it's best for them to avoid unnecessary fights. Thankfully, these feisty creatures never look to man for food, but a fully grown specimen would be a difficult fight for most people. The Eurasian lynx is the largest of the lynx species, and it's one of the largest predators in Europe. As I've covered in a recent video, they were once found over a much larger range, but thanks to poaching and habitat loss, they have a much smaller distribution today. Because large predators are needed in healthy ecosystems and because large herbivore numbers are getting out of control in some parts of Europe, there have been a few reintroduction campaigns across Europe, and there have been proposed reintroductions in places such as the UK. These reintroduction campaigns are often very controversial, as there are many arguments for and against their reintroduction. Farmers argue that their livestock will not be safe, and some people fear for their own lives. Eurasian lynx will sometimes target livestock, but they would only be reintroduced into sparsely populated areas, and there are different methods that can be used to stop predation on livestock. We have hunted them to extinction in the UK and converted their old habitats into agricultural land, so we need to make more room for nature or there will be no nature left, and the large herbivore numbers will continue to rise. This issue is a little more controversial at the moment, as it seems as though some people have taken it into their own hands and they have released a few lynx into the Scottish Highlands. This is of course not the way to go about things, and the lynx released seem to be in poor health. These predators are fully capable of taking down large deer such as red deer and young moose, so you'd assume that they would also be capable of dispatching a human. Despite this, they have never fatally attacked a human in the wild, and once again this is due to their nature. Like the snow leopard, they are known for being incredibly elusive, and they choose to avoid humans when they come across them. The Eurasian lynx and the snow leopard have very similar stories, but hopefully they will both make a comeback in the future. The orca is arguably the most impressive predator on this planet, and it's the most obvious inclusion on this list. As I've covered why the orca doesn't attack humans in the wild at great length in another video, I will keep this brief, but the reasons are all about their intelligence and how they are raised. The orca has been historically classified as one species with no subspecies, but experts believe that this should have been changed a long time ago. Different groups of orcas around the world differ in shape, size and appearance, and they feed on completely different animals. Some orca ecotypes will only feed on fish and they get on well with other cetaceans, whereas other orca ecotypes predominantly feed on marine mammals and will hunt other cetaceans. When people swim with orcas, they mostly swim with the fish-eating orcas because it's safer, but when given the opportunity, these giants have never killed people in the wild. Famously, it's a very different story in captivity, but keeping these intelligent animals in captivity is inhumane, and it has a massive negative effect on their physical and mental health. In the wild, orcas will usually only feed on what they have been taught to, and this can cause major problems. For example, some salmon-eating orcas have been struggling due to the global decline of salmon numbers, and we have been trying to teach them to eat other prey animals. Orcas seem to be fascinated with us as they can't seem to figure us out, and this is why they will often take interest in swimmers and paddleboarders but never seem to attack them. This is still something that fascinates many of us around the world, and it wouldn't be a total shock if one of these animals were to attack humans in the future. Most of North America's large predators can, and in some rare cases, do hunt humans, but of course some animals are more dangerous than others. In today's video, I'll be trying to uncover which of North America's top predators are most likely to claim human lives, but I'm fully aware that this is almost impossible to do. There are so many factors that can affect the results, such as how many of them there are in North America, where in North America they are found, and how many attacks have been fatal. To try and get a clearer picture, I have sifted through the available data, and I've hopefully found a way to make the information a little clearer. We'll be totting up all of the fatal attacks from each of the deadliest predators in North America since the year 2000, and we'll be comparing this to their overall population across the continent. This isn't a perfect solution, as some of the animals are found in places with barely any humans, but I think it will still help to paint a clearer picture. Now that I've gotten all of the waffling out of the way, we can take a look at our first species, and unsurprisingly, it's one of the most common predators across the continent. The coyote can be found across the majority of North America, and famously they are one of the few North American animals that have benefited from human domination. When the Europeans arrived in the Americas, they quickly decimated many of the large predator numbers, meaning that the coyotes were free to roam unchecked. This is part of the reason why they can now be found in many ecosystems where they were once absent, but we aren't the only reason behind their success. Coyotes do extremely well in urban and semi-urban areas, and their adaptability and their intelligence allows them to do so. In some areas across their range, they are still targeted by larger predators, but they are sometimes able to find peace with other canines. Coyotes will often hybridize with domesticated dogs and wolves, with there being distinct populations of these hybrids in a few locations across the continent. Now, it's extremely hard to estimate the true population of any animal with a range as large as the coyotes, but most sources have the number at around 4.7 million. The vast majority of these animals are shy in the presence of humans and would lose in a fight against us, but with a population this large, there are going to be attacks from time to time. There has only been one fatal coyote attack since the year 2000, and this story is a real tragic one. The attack took place in the Cape Breton Highlands National Park back in 2009, and this area has a healthy eastern coyote population. The eastern coyote is a coyote-wolf hybrid, and they are larger and more powerful than your average coyote. A young singer-songwriter was taking a stroll in the national park when she was attacked by two coyotes, and tragically she did not survive the ordeal. Other hikers claimed that the pair of coyotes showed no fear and even forced people out of their way, which of course is extremely peculiar behaviour. After the attack, the coyotes were killed by wardens, and this is one of only 2 recorded fatal coyote attacks since records began. Because there has only been one fatal attack since the year 2000, this means that there is one fatal attack for every 4.7 million coyotes. For this reason, the coyote easily comes in at 7th place, and under normal circumstances, they are no threat to human life at all. The American alligator is one of the most dominant predators in all of North America, and they'll target pretty much all other animals in their ecosystem once they're fully grown. It's no secret that places such as Florida have a pretty bad invasive species problem, but without the American alligator, the situation would be a lot worse. They are one of only a few native predators that will battle all of the invasive invaders, and thankfully there are quite a lot of them in the southeastern US. Once again, population estimates vary, but most credible sources have the number at around 5 million individuals. This is really quite uplifting data as we humans almost completely wiped them out, and the wetland ecosystems of North America would have felt very empty without them. Now, because of their immense size and power, some adult alligators would find it pretty easy to grab and kill a human, but thankfully they aren't as aggressive as other crocodilians across the globe. Because of their large population, many people live alongside and coexist with alligators, but every now and again they do claim the lives of humans. Since the year 2000, there have been 32 recorded fatal alligator attacks in North America, with the vast majority of victims either being very young or very old. In one of the more heroic cases, an 85-year-old woman saved her dog from an attacking alligator, and she tragically paid the price with her life. I'm sure many other dog owners would have done a similar thing if they were in the same situation, and I think it's safe to say that this was an extremely brave and courageous way to go. The alligator's giant population means that there is around one fatal attack for every 156,250 alligators, and this means that they take the 6th place spot. Unlike their relatives, the coyotes, wolves have suffered greatly under the foot of man. Because wolves are efficient hunters and can easily pick off livestock, they have been heavily persecuted by man, and historically they have always been portrayed as deadly man-eaters. In the modern day, this couldn't be further from the truth, as aggressive wolf interactions are rare and fatal attacks are even rarer. Most wolf attacks on humans are the result of desperation or rabies, and most North American wolf populations are found far away from human inhabitation. Most North American wolves have developed a healthy fear of man over the years due to the relentless hunting, but this doesn't mean that they are shy or timid animals. They work together to bring down animals many times their own size, and they'll even challenge other giant predators in their ecosystem. Wolves have an estimated population of around 78,000 across the US, Canada, and Greenland, but there have only been 2 fatal attacks in North America since the year 2000. One occurred in Canada back in 2005, and the other was in Alaska in 2010. The latter was the first fatal wolf attack in Alaska where DNA evidence was used to prove wolf involvement, and both fatal attack locations were very remote. The data shows us that there are 39,000 wolves in North America for every fatal attack in the past 25 years, and this means that the grey wolf slots in at 5th place. The American black bear has the largest population of any bear in the world, with there being an estimated 750,000 of them across North America. They differ greatly in size, colour, and shape across their range, with the Commodore bear and the cinnamon bear being some of the most striking examples. Like many other predators on the list, they have been negatively affected by humans in the past, as they were once found in greater numbers much further south. Despite this, they have fared better than some of the other large predators, and this might be due to the fact that they are easier to coexist with. Black bears are much less likely to attack humans than other North American bears, and they can even adapt to living in urban and semi-urban areas. Because they are easier to live with, they haven't faced as much persecution, but fatal attacks do happen from time to time. Meat only makes up a small part of a black bear's diet, and most attacks on humans are defensive when people get too close to them or their young. They'll often give you a warning through mock charges or by swatting at the ground, and bears that have been fed by humans are much more likely to attack and end up dead. This is why you should always remember the saying, a fed bear is a dead bear, as feeding a wild bear is one of the worst things that you can do for the bear's health. In some rare cases, extremely large black bears have attacked people to hunt them, and they are usually attracted to campsites because of the abundance of food. The most recent fatal attack took place at the start of this month in Arkansas, where a 60-year-old man was targeted at a campground. There have been 39 fatal attacks in the last 25 years, which is pretty high, but this is due to their massive population and not because of their aggression. This means that there are 19,230 black bears per every fatal attack, and this means that the American black bear takes the 4th place spot. The cougar is one of the most widespread cats in the world, being found over large parts of both North and South America. Because of their extensive range, they have needed to adapt to hunt different prey animals and deal with different climates, but they have been able to overcome these challenges with ease. Despite the fact that they are potentially dangerous apex predators, they can even adapt to urban areas, with some Californian cougars living among humans their entire lives. The legendary cougar named P22 was one such cat, and he got up to a lot of mischief over his lifetime. He was accused of hunting animals in the LA Zoo and was spotted by locals from time to time, and eventually, after he was possibly hit by a car, he was euthanized in December of 2022. Even after his death, he's remained an icon of conservation, but unfortunately not all cougars are as timid as P22. Unlike most bears, meat makes up almost all of the cougar's diet, and they have to compete with various giant predators across their range. This means that it's essential for them to have a mean streak, and they'll often eliminate animals that are far larger and more formidable than humans. If you're attacked by a fully grown cougar that hasn't eaten in days, then you're likely not going to have much of a chance. But unlike with some other North American predators, you are advised to fight back if attacked. You should move away slowly while facing the cat, and if you come to blows, you should punch like your life depends on it, because it very much does. The most recent fatal attack took place in California and involved two brothers, and they both did exactly what you're supposed to do. Despite this, only one brother escaped with his life, and his brother's actions likely saved his own life. It's hard to look through so many tragic stories when researching these videos, but it's always uplifting to see heroic acts where people have selflessly given their own lives to save others. There are an estimated 42,000 cougars across North America, and over the past 25 years there have been 6 fatal attacks. This means that there are 7,000 cougars per fatal attack, which means that the cougar is fit for 3rd place. The polar bear is arguably both the deadliest and the most likely of all North American predators to attack and eliminate humans, and the fact that they aren't in 1st place underlines the problem with this video. If polar bears were found in areas with healthy human populations, then they would likely take the 1st place spot, but they are usually found in mostly uninhabited areas. In places where they are known to visit, the locals are very aware of the threat, and there are certain strategies that we use to try and stop polar bears from attacking humans. In places such as Churchill, problem polar bears are put in polar bear jail, and once they've served their time, they are relocated. This is designed to make polar bears fear human inhabited areas, or at least associate humans with having a very boring time in jail with no food. Even with all of these efforts, it's almost impossible to fully control this animal, as they are one of the largest land predators alive today, and unlike most other bears, it's a hyper-carnivore. Most attacks on humans are predatory attacks, but attacks are more likely if the animal is starving or injured. The most recent fatal attack occurred in August of last year, when a logistics worker was killed by 2 polar bears in northern Canada. Unlike the other North American bears, most polar bear attacks on humans take place near human inhabitation, and it's been suggested that this is because desperate bears are more likely to approach these areas because of the smell and the abundance of food. The number of polar bears in North America fluctuates greatly, but some sources claim that there are around 18,000 bears that can be found here. Over the past 25 years, there have been 5 fatalities across North America, meaning that there are 3,600 polar bears for each fatal attack. This means that the mighty polar bear takes the 2nd place spot, and the final predator shouldn't come as a surprise to many. There are a few different subspecies of brown bear that can be found across North America, with the grizzly bear being the most well known and the Kodiak bear being the largest. This bear even rivals the polar bear in size, but as it's found in a relatively remote area, fatal attacks involving this subspecies are rare. Brown bears are the true masters of their ecosystem, targeting some of the largest animals around, and they'll even hunt other bears such as the aforementioned black bear. Because of their reputation, it's easy to view brown bears as soulless, brutal killers, but like many other bears, the majority of their diet is made up of plant matter and fish. Of course, they do hunt large mammals from time to time, and if you meet a giant brown bear that's decided that it wants to taste human, then there's little that you can do unless you have a gun. The brown bears in North America are known for being more aggressive than the brown bears in parts of Europe, and Jeremy Wade found out while fishing in Alaska it's a good idea not to fight with a brown bear over a fish. One of the main reasons why they aren't as widespread today as they used to be is because they are more difficult to coexist with peacefully, and that's why the Europeans killed so many of them when they settled on the continent. There are an estimated 47,000 brown bears in North America, and since the year 2000 there have been 43 fatal attacks. The most recent victim died only 2 days ago at the time of recording, and this was the result of being charged at by a large female bear. The attack took place in British Columbia, and the hunter managed to shoot the bear in the hip, but this wasn't enough to stop it from killing him. Despite the fact that this shot didn't stop the bear from charging, it did prove to be fatal, as the bear was later found dead 2 kilometers away from where the attack took place. What makes the brown bear so dangerous is the fact that they will often viciously attack if they are surprised or startled, which is why you'll often see videos of people talking to the bears as they approach. Thankfully, fatal brown bear attacks are still relatively rare, but based on the data that we have, they are the most likely to attack. The data shows us that there are 1,093 brown bears per fatal attack in the past 25 years, meaning that the brown bear easily takes the first place spot. Beaches are among the most important habitats on this planet, with many different species using them to hunt, to rest, to mate, and to lay their eggs. Because wild beaches are such a hive of wildlife activity, this usually attracts aquatic predators, which means that there can be danger on the beaches and also in the waters surrounding them. Of course, humans also enjoy the beauty and tranquility of beaches, but I suggest that you think twice before visiting some of the beaches in this video. This is because today we'll be taking a look at some of the deadliest beaches in the world, but instead of focusing on deadly currents or treacherous terrain, I will solely be ranking the beaches based on their wildlife. Without further ado, we can travel to our first beach, and to find it we'll be heading to an island in the Indian Ocean. Mauritius is a beautiful country with imposing mountains and idyllic beaches, and it's not exactly known for being a dangerous place to visit. It was once famously home to the iconic dodo and many giant ebony trees, but today a large number of the species on the island are invasive. In the warm waters around Mauritius, you'll find a wide variety of tropical reef fish and turtles, but shark sightings and shark attacks are extremely rare. The shallow waters and extensive reefs around many of its beaches mean that they are relatively safe, but it's the shallows that sometimes hide a potentially dangerous creature. Earlier on in January of this year, my girlfriend and I were lucky enough to visit Mauritius, and we were very fortunate not to run into the creature in question. Because I make animal videos for a living, you'd assume that I'd be aware of all the potentially dangerous animals in the region, but I had completely forgotten about the existence of one deadly fish. We spent one of the days of our holiday snorkeling in the shallows, and we were pleasantly surprised with the variety of fish around the rocks. In hindsight, we might have gotten a bit too close to the rocks, and we were made aware of the danger the very next day. After chatting with a local wildlife expert, we were told not to swim or wade in the beaches near the local nature reserve, and this was because the waters were full of stonefish. For those of you who are unaware, stonefish are the most venomous fish in the world, and it can be very easy to step on them. As their name implies, they look just like a stone, and they stay very still, waiting for their prey to come to them. If you're stung by a stonefish and you can't get to the hospital quickly, then it can be fatal, but thankfully stonefish-related fatalities are extremely rare. The beaches in question were along the coast of Bellom, and if you search about visiting or swimming in the area, you'll often find stories about stonefish. If you wear protective footwear and you swim instead of walking in the shallows, then you'll be just fine, but the sheer amount of stonefish in the area does make it more dangerous than most of the beaches on the island. For this reason, the beaches along Bellom slot in at number 8, but this shouldn't stop you from snorkeling there. For our next beach, we don't have to travel very far at all, as strangely we'll be heading to the neighbouring island. If you head southwest of Mauritius, you'll arrive at the French island of Réunion, and even though Réunion is very close to Mauritius, it's dangerous for a completely different reason. This small island is known for being a real shark attack hotspot, and at one point in time the situation was so bad that swimming was banned on most of its beaches. From 2011 to 2016, 16% of the world's fatal shark attacks took place in the waters around Réunion, and experts are still trying to figure out why this is. Some experts have suggested that it's because Réunion is on a so-called shark highway, as many sharks travel from South Africa to Australia, and Réunion is a popular service station for the sharks. There are quite a few beaches on the island that are dangerous, but one that's seen its fair share of fatal and non-fatal attacks is Bukan Kano. Part of the reason why this location is particularly dangerous is because it's a popular surfing spot, and surfers are sometimes targeted by great white sharks. The last fatal shark attack on this beach occurred in 2015, but there was a near fatal attack in 2019. It seems as though sharks are just more likely to attack around this small island, and it's strange how it's a completely different story on the neighbouring island of Mauritius. The point of these videos is not to villainize sharks or other potentially dangerous animals, as we often share the waters with these predators but we are completely unaware. The Malibu artist does a great job at showing this, as he's captured incredible footage of people coming within meters of giant sharks without even noticing. Reunion just seems to have all of the unwanted ingredients to make a shark attack hotspot, and for this reason it slots in at number 7. Of course, not all beaches are found along the coasts, as many of the world's giant rivers and lakes have large sandy beaches. One of these beaches can be found near the city of Manaus in Brazil, and it's locally known as Moon Beach. This wild beach sits on the Rio Negro, and it's a popular tourist destination for people looking to relax or to do a bit of fishing. At first, this beach may not seem like a particularly dangerous destination, but there are a few animals that you'll need to look out for both in and out of the water. If you're really unlucky, you could run into a jaguar roaming the banks looking for an easy meal, but jaguars rarely see humans directly as a food source, and attacks are extremely rare. In the water, you'll have to keep an eye out for the vast numbers of caiman, and even though the majority of caiman species aren't a threat, the formidable black caiman is. The black caiman is the largest of all caiman species, and they are responsible for more human fatalities than any other alligatorid. Since 2014, 19 people have lost their lives to these giant reptiles, and of course there's a risk of sharks here too. Bull sharks are known to regularly travel up the Rio Negro and the Amazon, and even though there have been no confirmed shark attacks in the river, there's always a small chance that it could happen. There are also potentially deadly creatures that you don't want to get on the wrong side of, such as piranhas, electric eels and stingrays, so really you need to be cautious when entering the water. Moon Beach isn't in this video for one reason in particular, but rather because it has multiple threats both on land and in the water. For this reason, I believe it's fit for number 6, and for our next beach we'll be heading north. New Smyrna Beach is located on Florida's east coast, and its shores are lined with many hotels and touristy areas. Behind the beach you can find lagoons and wetland areas full of fish, and this attracts a large number of predators. Large sharks such as bull sharks love hunting in brackish waters, and many different species use the wetlands behind New Smyrna Beach as a nursery. This means that alligators and most sharks in the area are hunting, and this might be why it's the beach with the most shark bites in the world. It's often referred to as the shark bite capital of the world, but this title doesn't tell the whole story. You'd assume that this beach would be a lot higher on the list if it's the shark bite capital of the world, but these bites are very rarely fatal, and the stats are buffed by the fact that it's a popular tourist location. If you look at the stats, then it seems to be a mystery why there are so few fatalities when the bite stats are so high, but it all gets a little clearer when you look at the culprit behind most of the bites. Blacktip sharks are responsible for most of the attacks on New Smyrna Beach, and even though these sharks have the potential to be deadly to humans, they are nowhere near as dangerous as the top 3, the tiger shark, the bull shark, and the great white shark. These deadly sharks can be found in the waters around New Smyrna Beach, but they don't attack people as frequently as they do on other beaches around the world. So even though bites are common, fatalities are rare, and this is why New Smyrna Beach slots in at number 5. Stamford's Cove Beach is located next to the village of Kantspy, southeast of Cape Town, and this area is famous for its ecotourism, mainly because of the large number of great white sharks along its shores. It's considered by many to be the great white shark capital of the world, and if you want an adrenaline rush, you can even hop in the water with them. Without a cage, this would be a very bad idea, as the great white sharks in the area are actively hunting. There are large populations of fur seals that live along the coasts in the region, so it's a very bad idea to go for a swim here. Despite this, fatal attacks are almost unheard of in the area, but this is because of the local knowledge and the warnings about the sharks. The waters around the beach are also very unforgiving when it comes to currents and giant waves, but in the cove, the waters are a lot calmer. In recent years, the waters around Can't Spy have become a little safer for humans, and this is because of the most formidable predator on the planet. Famously, orcas are one of the few predators that will target great white sharks, and their presence is enough to make some sharks evacuate the area. This has led to a drop in great white shark numbers around Can't Spy in recent years, and with the great white sharks gone, the smaller copper sharks have started to increase in number. If you were crazy enough to go for a long swim along the coast of Stamford's Cove Beach, then you probably won't last long, but thankfully not many people are willing to do this. For this reason, it slots in at number 4, but if you want to observe giant sharks in the safety of a cage, then this is the place for you. For our next section, we'll be staying in Africa, but we will be heading northwest. The Skeleton Coast has a name that seems as though it was made for this video, but it isn't really a beach. Instead, it's an iconic stretch of coastline, but as it's adjacent to the Namib Desert, I'm going to count it as a beach for the sake of this video. The Skeleton Coast is called so because of the two different types of skeletons that can be found here, the skeletons of whales and seals, and the skeletons of dead ships. As it's not too far from our previous beach, it's also home to deadly sharks such as great whites, but there's also danger lurking behind the dunes. This coastline is home to a unique population of desert lions, and they take advantage of the animals that rest on its shores. Because most marine mammals such as fur seals are pretty clumsy on land, if the desert lions manage to stay out of sight, then they have a relatively easy meal. You have to feel sorry for the pinnipeds in this region as they face apex predators both on the land and in the sea, and it's not the safest area for humans too. Fatal shark and big cat attacks along the Skeleton Coast are almost unheard of, but that's because not many people live in the area, and few people are crazy enough to swim in the ocean or walk the dunes here. There have been a few cases where fishermen have had very close calls with lions, but thankfully they have been able to escape to the safety of their vehicles. Because the lions are actively hunting along the coast, it makes them particularly more dangerous. And it doesn't matter if you're a seal or a human, you need to keep an eye out for danger. For this reason, the Skeleton Coast slots in at number 3, and up next is another freshwater beach. Lake Victoria was at the top of the list when I made a similar video on the deadliest lakes in the world, and believe it or not, it has a few beaches along its banks. For those of you who haven't watched that video, the lake is deadly for two reasons in particular, one of them being the hippo, and the other being the Nile crocodile. The Nile crocodile claims the lives of more people than any other extant crocodilian, and there have been many notorious man-eaters over the years. Many of the locals use this lake as a source of water for travel and for fishing, and this puts them at great risk of croc attacks. This danger alone would mean that the beaches along its banks are some of the deadliest in the world, but the hippos make the danger even greater. Famously, hippos kill more people than most African predators do, and they are known for being extremely territorial and unpredictable. Because Lake Victoria is around the same size as Latvia, the densities of these animals in the lake are relatively low, but they do tend to congregate around the areas where rivers enter the lake, and where there is an abundance of aquatic vegetation. Nyatwali Beach is in one such area, and even though this beach is tiny and pretty unknown, because it's in an area of the lake with high croc and hippo numbers, it's one of the deadliest beaches on Lake Victoria. It's very hard to find exact data on croc and hippo attacks in the area, but between 2019 and 2023, 19 people lost their lives to crocodiles on the Tanzanian side of the lake. This means that Nyatwali Beach and its neighbouring beaches slot in at number 2, and for our final beach, we'll be heading over to Australia. Cape Kimberley Beach is located in Queensland in the north of Australia, and it's positioned where the Daintree River flows into the Great Barrier Reef. This area is ideal for wildlife lovers and thrill seekers, but it's not a great idea to enter the water here. The Daintree River is full of saltwater crocodiles, and just upriver from Cape Kimberley Beach is where you can find many cruises that help you get close to these apex predators. Saltwater crocs are mostly found in the brackish sections of rivers, but they do sometimes enter and hunt in the salt waters off of Cape Kimberley Beach. The saltwater crocodile is responsible for the second most human fatalities after the Nile croc, but attacks in Australia are extremely rare due to warnings and local awareness. Cape Kimberley Beach isn't a popular beach by any means, because if it was and people entered the water, then it could easily end in tragedy. Of course, it's not only the crocs that love this area, but also sharks and stonefish, and if you're really unlucky, then you could receive a sting off of a deadly box jellyfish. Some box jellies are capable of ending human lives, so it's always important to look out for warning signs in northern Australia. This area is also renowned for its large cassowary population, but these animals are very rarely a threat to humans, and it's far more dangerous in the water. Because there are so many potentially deadly threats in the waters around Cape Kimberley Beach, it takes the top spot. But of course, these videos are just a bit of fun, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for deadly beaches in the comments down below. Our planet has a wide variety of giant lakes, and some of these waters are safer than others. A number of Earth's lakes are extremely dangerous due to temperature, toxic gases, and pollution, but other lakes are extremely deadly for a totally different reason. Instead of focusing on lakes that are deadly because they are toxic or because of temperature-related factors, I'll be focusing on lakes that are deadly because of the wildlife that inhabits them. Some of the world's deadliest predators can be found in freshwater and saltwater lakes, and I'll be going through just a few of them today. Without further ado, we can take a look at our first lake, and to find it, we'll be heading over to North America. Lake Okeechobee is the largest freshwater lake in Florida, and it covers around 1,900 square kilometers. Even though it's a giant lake, it's surprisingly shallow, with an average depth of around 2.7 meters. This is good news for its most famous resident, because as I'm sure many of you already know, this lake is full of alligators. The estimates for the number of alligators in this lake varies greatly, but most experts can agree that the true number lies between 20,000 and 30,000 alligators. Even though these scaly creatures can reach lengths of over 4.5 meters, they are rarely a threat to humans, and this is because they are usually focused on more conventional prey. Over the past 5 years, there have only been 9 fatal alligator attacks in the US, and this is despite the fact that there are an estimated 5 million alligators alive today. Even though fatal attacks are rare, they aren't non-existent, which is the main reason why this lake is on the list. You can also find large invasive species such as Burmese pythons in Lake Okeechobee, and even though they have the potential to claim the lives of humans, there has never been a fatal attack from a wild Burmese python in Florida. You could lose a finger or a few toes to snapping turtles, but in most cases these animals just want to be left alone, and they will usually only bite in self-defense. Lake Okeechobee is a very important ecosystem for many beautiful and endangered animals, and the only reason why it's on the list is because of the sheer number of alligators that call it home. The toxic algal blooms are known for being almost as dangerous as the alligators in this lake, so really you should think twice before swimming here, and Lake Okeechobee slots in at number 7. The Tonle Sap is the largest freshwater lake in Southeast Asia, and it's known for being one of the most diverse and productive ecosystems in the world. It can be found in the Mekong River system in Cambodia, and over 1 million people rely on this lake for a source of food, for work, and for travel. If you sit on the banks of the Tonle Sap, it almost looks like an ocean, and just like an ocean, it's home to countless species of fish. Most of these fish are only dangerous if you eat them, such as the toxic freshwater pufferfish, but the stingrays are more of a threat. These fish can cause some very nasty leg wounds if they're stepped on, but the most dangerous animal in this lake is capable of claiming human lives. The Siamese crocodile is a medium-sized freshwater crocodile, and it's a species that usually goes under the radar. Even though they were once widespread, they are now extinct across 99% of their former range, and they're currently listed as critically endangered, with the Tonle Sap being one of their last remaining strongholds. The vast majority of these reptiles are found in captivity today, with only an estimated 200 to 400 individuals being found in the whole of Cambodia. Even though these crocs are rare and relatively docile, they can still be dangerous, but most attacks occur in captivity. If you go back in time, this lake would have ranked a lot higher on this list, as saltwater crocodiles and tigers were once found along its banks. Today, both of these predators are extinct in the area, and there are many more native animals that are under threat. The Tonle Sap is shrinking and dying due to climate change and human activities such as dam building, and this puts all its wildlife and the people that rely on it at risk. It really is a shame that this lake isn't as biodiverse as it used to be, and today it's only fit for number 6. Lake Nicaragua is the largest freshwater lake in Central America, with an area of around 8,300 square kilometers. It's known for being an extremely beautiful lake with volcanoes surrounding it, and it's an extremely important and unique ecosystem. It has many freshwater fish and waterfowl that bring a splash of colour to its waters, but unlike almost all other freshwater lakes around the world, it also has a large number of saltwater species. Sawfish, tarpon and sharks can be found in its waters, and at one point in time they were believed to be endemic species. Initially, scientists thought that the sharks in the lake were unique to science, and they were first described as the Nicaragua sharks, but now it's believed that they are the more widely known bull sharks. This giant lake was once a bay, but over millions of years the water levels changed and the bay became a landlocked lake. This meant that some of the sharks and other saltwater creatures became trapped here, and surprisingly some of them have been able to adapt to freshwater conditions. Of course, it's a well-known fact that bull sharks can travel hundreds of miles up rivers, but this is one of the only freshwater lakes where they can be found in healthy numbers. For years it was believed that these creatures had no way of getting to and from the ocean, but this was eventually disproved in the late 1960s. This was when it was discovered that they could travel up the rapids of the San Juan River almost like salmon, and the journey from the sea usually takes around 7 to 11 days. This migratory behaviour is just one of the many reasons why some people believe that bull sharks are the most interesting sharks in the world, but unfortunately they are also one of the most dangerous sharks. Larger sized bull sharks are likely responsible for the majority of near-shore shark attacks, but thankfully shark attacks are very rare in Lake Nicaragua. The fact that this lake is full of sharks is very well known today, but another factor that's often overlooked is its crocodile population. As well as looking out for sharks, you also need to keep your eyes peeled for the American crocodile, which is one of the largest reptiles in the world. Some specimens can measure over 6 meters in length, and they have claimed the lives of humans in the past. Thankfully, they are one of the less aggressive giant crocs, and they mostly focus on catching fish and not humans. Despite this, Lake Nicaragua's waters are still a lot more dangerous than most other lakes due to possible shark and croc attacks, and for this reason, it slots in at number 5. The next inclusion on this list is a bit of an odd one, because it's a lake that's only been visited by a handful of people, and it doesn't even seem to have a name. This section is all based on a discovery back in January of 2021, where a team of scientists discovered more than 100 electric eels in a small lake next to the Erie River. Electric eels aren't true eels, as instead they are freshwater knife fish, and they have an interesting way of navigating their environment and catching their prey. Because many waters in their natural habitat are very murky and because their eyesight is very poor, they use a small electrical current to help them navigate their environment almost like a sonar. When they find their prey or when they're attacked, they are capable of shocking with 860 volts, and if you're shocked you can suffer from a heart attack, respiratory failure and drowning. The sheer number of electric eels in this small lake could mean that if you fell in you could be shocked multiple times, and without help this would almost certainly be fatal. Thankfully in the wild, electric eel shocks are rare, and they mostly occur when they are caught in nets. The waters and banks of this small lake are also frequented by caiman and jaguars, and even though fatal attacks from these predators are rare, this adds to the danger of this small body of water. This scientific discovery was one of the first examples of electric eels working together to hunt, as before this they were thought to be solitary creatures. The fact that the eels in this lake are so densely packed together is the main reason why it's so deadly, and for this reason it slots in at number 4. Now, if I were to mention the saltwater crocodile in this video, then most people would naturally think of Australia. As I've covered many times on this channel before, even though Australia has a large number of saltwater crocodiles, fatal attacks on humans are still very rare. Australia only has a handful of lakes where large numbers of saltwater crocodiles can be found, but it's a different story in Indonesia. There are far more fatal croc attacks in Southeast Asia than there are in Australia, and one croc attack hotspot is Bangka Island. Strangely, there isn't one infamous lake on this island where the majority of attacks occur, as instead there are many smaller man-made lakes that are full of crocs, and these are the lakes that I'll be focusing on in this video. At first, it might seem strange to group lots of smaller lakes together and classify them as one lake for this video, but there are so many fatal croc attacks on this island, and they all happen in the abandoned tin mine lakes that litter the country. The tin mining industry on Bangka Island is extremely immoral and dangerous, and it's caused significant environmental damage. Mangrove habitats on the island were cleared so that tin could be mined in the area, and these habitats were home to thousands of saltwater crocodiles. As they had nowhere else to go, they quickly moved into the tin mines, and this has now become one of the most dangerous crocodile attack hotspots in the world. Indonesia sees the most saltwater crocodile attacks in the world, with 1,000 attacks taking place between 2013 and 2023, and out of these 1,000 attacks, 450 were fatal. 90 of the fatal attacks occurred on Bangka Island, and this is despite the fact that it has a relatively small population. Around 80% of the population on the island are tin miners, and this means that they regularly enter the deadly tin mine lakes. Locals often use the water to bathe and for other household uses, and this is where the saltwater crocodiles wait to ambush them. After an attack, the crocodiles are usually killed even though they are protected, and as there seems to be no end to the tin mining industry on the island, the attacks will likely become more frequent. If you group these deadly lakes together, then they easily slot in at number 3, and this problem is only going to get worse in the future. Padang Talau is an iconic lake in Ranthambore National Park, and it's known for its beauty and its cultural significance. This area is renowned for its large tiger population, and this is one of the reasons why it's so high up on this list. Unlike some other big cats, tigers are very fond of the water, and they will even hunt their natural prey in rivers and lakes. In the Sundarbans, they are known to attack people on small wooden boats, and they will chase and hunt deer that have entered the water. This means that if you were to take a dip in this lake, you could become tiger food, but these aren't the only predators to look out for in Padang Talau. Mugger crocodiles can be found over large areas of the Indian subcontinent, and they have a healthy population in Ranthambore National Park. These crocodilians are capable of reaching lengths of over 5 meters, and they are relatively aggressive compared to other crocodilians. They are the third most dangerous species to humans after the saltwater and Nile crocodiles, and around a third of attacks on humans are fatal. 2018 was a particularly bad year for mugger crocodile attacks, with around 18 people losing their lives on the Indian subcontinent. Indian pythons also regularly hunt and swim in these waters, and even though fatal attacks from these snakes are rare, they have happened in the past. As well as the predators, there are also plenty of dangerous insectivores and omnivores to look out for, such as the deadly sloth bears and the potentially dangerous Indian boars. All of these combined deadly threats means that Padang Talau slots in at number 2, but it's still one of the best places to spot Indian wildlife. Lake Victoria is Africa's largest lake by surface area, with it spanning around 69,000 square kilometers. This giant body of water is shared by 3 different African countries: Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. This lake was famous for its countless numbers of endemic cichlid species, but thanks to invasive species such as the Nile perch, the native fish are much harder to find nowadays. Thankfully, the giant Nile perch is not a threat to humans, but Lake Victoria has plenty of animals that are. In Africa's freshwaters, there are 2 species that really stand out because of how deadly they are, and these 2 animals are the hippo and the Nile crocodile. Even though Nile crocodiles are slightly smaller than saltwater crocodiles, they are responsible for more human fatalities, and there have been a large number of infamous man-eaters over the years. Fatal attacks do occur on the banks of Lake Victoria, and this is only exacerbated by the fact that their native prey is a lot rarer after the introduction of the Nile perch. If having the deadliest crocodilian in the world wasn't enough, this lake is also home to one of Africa's deadliest mammals. Famously, hippos claim the lives of more humans than most of Africa's large predators, and they tend to be more aggressive in the water. If they don't kill you directly, then they can kill you by capsizing boats, and as Lake Victoria is crucial for the lives of most of the people who live on its banks, attacks on humans are unfortunately common. The presence of the hippo and the Nile crocodile mean that Lake Victoria is the deadliest lake in the world, and it's not a good idea to go for a paddle in its unforgiving waters. When most of us think of deadly animals, then we tend to imagine some of the largest or maybe the most venomous predators on this planet, but Earth's plant eaters are pretty formidable too. If you manage to exist in some of the most competitive ecosystems in the world, then you need to either be able to escape predators, or you need to be able to fend them off and protect yourself. Some herbivores have become so good at defeating predators that when they get to a certain size, they are pretty much invincible, and no predator of any size will even think of targeting them. Because of human-wildlife conflicts and because animals that live in competitive ecosystems are more aggressive, some of these herbivores will attack man, and this sometimes results in large herbivores claiming the lives of more humans than large predators. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at some of the deadliest herbivores on this planet, and we'll be ranking each continent by its deadliest herbivore. We'll be looking for these animals in a variety of different habitats, but as I'm sure some of you have already guessed, we'll be starting off somewhere very cold. Outside of the colourful summer months, Antarctica is mostly covered in snow and ice, which means that being a herbivore is nearly impossible. Most of the hardy animals that manage to survive here get their sustenance from the sea, and this is where you'll find some of the only herbivores in the region. Some of the Antarctic krill feed on plankton and nothing else, and these small crustaceans support some of the largest animals alive today, and also many of the pinnipeds and penguins in the region. Because I'm not including marine creatures, and because krill are pretty harmless, Antarctica slots in at number 7, and for our next section we'll obviously be heading north. South America is home to some of the most vibrant and distinctive ecosystems in the world, with the landscapes and climate changing dramatically from north to south and east to west. In northern areas, you'll find lush rainforests and giant murky rivers that are home to unique mammals, and in the south you'll find vast deserts and freezing environments where large cats reign supreme. On the western side of South America, you'll find the vast Andes Mountains, and even though most large animals are unable to survive here, some just about manage to scrape out a living. In the vast wetland regions such as the Pantanal, you'll find some of the most iconic herbivores on the continent, but in the vast majority of cases, they aren't a threat at all. The greater capybara is the largest living rodent, and it thrives in areas with an abundance of freshwater and aquatic vegetation. It faces many dangers in its day-to-day life, such as caiman, anacondas, and of course jaguars. These big cats are by far the most dangerous animals that the capybaras have to worry about, and when they come face to face with them, it's not in their nature to stand and fight. The water is their main escape route, and when a jaguar is spotted, they will dive into the water and attempt to swim away. They are surprisingly good swimmers, and in the murky waters of South America, the jaguar is at a disadvantage. There have been a few capybara attacks on humans over the years, but in the vast majority of cases, these attacks are provoked. Their strong, ever-growing teeth are more than capable of causing a fatal wound, but thankfully capybaras are mostly peaceful creatures. When it comes to dangerous animals in South America, there's one elephant, or should I say hippo, in the room, as famously Colombia is home to a small population of invasive hippos. I won't be featuring these deadly herbivores in this section as I want to focus on native species, but if I was including the hippos, they would be the most dangerous animals without question. The 4 members of the llama genus are only really dangerous if provoked, and almost all attacks occur in captivity. Most confrontations are handled with a spit or a bite, but this strategy isn't very effective against cougars, so in most cases they wisely choose to flee. There are 3 species of tapir that can be found in South America, and the largest and deadliest of the 3 is the lowland tapir. These mammals can be found in a wide range of lowland habitats, but they rarely stray away from large bodies of fresh water. The lowland tapir is the largest native terrestrial mammal in South America, reaching weights of up to 320 kilograms. At this size, only jaguars and cougars will target them, but unlike the capybaras, they sometimes choose to fight back. Despite the fact that their teeth aren't the sharpest, they do have powerful jaws, and they have claimed the lives of humans in the past. A 55-year-old man decided to attack one of these animals in his cornfield, and he later paid the price with his life. Fortunately, most lowland tapirs will flee if you let your presence be known, but attacking them is evidently not a smart thing to do. So even though these giants aren't the most ferocious animals in the world, they have the potential to be deadly, and this means that South America slots in at number 6. Oceania is mostly made up of small island nations and one massive landmass, and most of the interesting creatures on this continent can't be found anywhere else in the world. New Zealand was once home to giant herbivorous birds, but today most of its large herbivores are introduced, and the herbivores on the smaller islands of Oceania are relatively harmless. The majority of herbivores in Australia and Papua New Guinea are marsupials, and in the vast majority of cases they are harmless. If you were to travel back in time around 50,000 years, it would be a very different story, as this was when giant wombat and kangaroo relatives were roaming the continent. These herbivores were truly formidable creatures, but today it would be almost impossible to lose your life to most marsupials on the continent. Cassowaries, on the other hand, do have the ability to claim human lives, and they have proved this in the past, but most people agree that they aren't true herbivores. The vast majority of their diets are made up of forest fruits, but they also feed on large numbers of insects and rodents. The echidnas could be deadly if you threw them very hard at someone who wasn't expecting it, but this is not only cruel but would also land you in prison. There is one marsupial that is by far the most dangerous in Oceania, and this marsupial is the red kangaroo. This mammal is the largest of all kangaroos, and it's the largest native terrestrial mammal in Australia. The largest specimens can reach a height of around 2 meters, and an animal of this size can weigh around 90 kilograms. Not only are the males giants, but they are also extremely ripped, and they can be very dangerous when they feel threatened or when they are fighting for dominance. When they battle one another, they choose to box and kick, and their muscular tails are essential for this kind of fighting. Fatal attacks on humans are extremely rare, but if you don't give them the respect that they deserve, then it can end very badly. In September 2022, a man was killed by a red kangaroo that he kept as a pet, but instances such as this are almost unheard of. So even though they are fully capable of becoming killers, they are much more interested in fighting each other, and this means that Oceania slots in at number 5. Europe was once home to far more herbivores than it has today, but thankfully there are still millions of large herbivores that can be found here. The vast majority of large herbivores come in the form of deer, but only some of these animals are native to the continent. The beautiful roe deer is the most common native deer in Europe, but it shares its ecosystem with invaders from North America and Asia. In some of the more mountainous regions such as the Alps, you can find wild goats and sheep, but these animals are only really a threat if provoked, or if you spend too much time around an angry male. There is one large mammal that's garnered quite a bad reputation, and it's definitely an animal that you wouldn't want to startle. Today, the wild boar can be found on every continent apart from Antarctica, and this is despite the fact that they are only native to Eurasia and a small part of Africa. To be able to live in so many different ecosystems and to face so many predators and come out on top, you have to be extremely hardy, and the wild boar can be extremely aggressive and ruthless. The wild boar is definitely one of the deadliest large mammals in Europe, but as it's an omnivore, it doesn't have a place in this video. The European bison was once on the brink of extinction, but thankfully today it's increasing in number, and it's been a part of one of the most uplifting conservation success stories. It's the heaviest living land animal in Europe, reaching a height of around 2.1 meters at the shoulder and weighing in at around 1 metric ton. Thankfully, these animals are mostly gentle giants, but they have been known to attack if they feel threatened. Even though the European bison is the heaviest mammal in Europe, it's the joint tallest, and it's arguably not the deadliest. The moose, or as some Europeans refer to it, the elk, is the largest deer species in the world, and it can be found on both the Eurasian and North American landmasses. There are a few differences between the North American and European subspecies, with some of the North American subspecies being larger, and the European subspecies being more aggressive. Sweden is home to the largest and deadliest moose in Europe, with some specimens measuring 2.1 meters at the shoulder and weighing 800 kilograms. Mostly moose-related fatalities occur when they are involved in car collisions, but in some cases they have been known to attack people directly. In one strange case in Sweden in 2008, a man was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife, but he was later released after moose fur was found on her body, and it was concluded that a moose was likely the killer after they found additional forensic evidence. This bizarre case is just one example of how deadly these giants can be, and the mighty moose slots Europe in at a close number 4. North America shares a few large herbivore species with Eurasia, and these animals need to face some of the same large predators. Some animals choose to stand and fight against potential predators, and others have evolved the ability to run at immense speeds to avoid them. The pronghorn may look like a deer or maybe even a type of wild goat, but in fact their closest living relatives are giraffes and okapi. Unlike their closest relatives, they are renowned for their speed, as they are capable of running at speeds of up to 88.5 kilometers per hour. They are the fastest land mammal in the Americas, and if they are able to reach their top speed, then nothing can catch them. Thankfully, these speedy animals don't run at full pelt into humans or other unsuspecting animals, so they aren't the main animals that we'll be featuring in this section. Further north, you'll find stocky creatures that have adapted to some of the harshest conditions on this planet, but they aren't exactly mindless killers. The muskox is native to a few different Arctic regions across the northern hemisphere, with the largest population calling Canada home. These bovids are mostly peaceful creatures, but if you're an animal that regularly has to deal with large bears, you need to be able to defend yourself. Even relatively harmless creatures need to be treated with respect, and the muskox is no exception. Tragically, back in 2022, an Alaska man was killed in a rare attack outside his home, and this was after he was trying to scare them away. Just like Europe, North America is home to large deer such as elk and moose, but there is one animal that is easily the most formidable herbivore on the continent. The American bison is endemic to North America, but just like its European cousin, it was once on the brink of extinction. It seems as though humans have an obsession with trying to wipe these poor mammals out, but they have managed to survive to the present day, and fortunately they are thriving. There are 2 subspecies of American bison across North America, with the largest subspecies reaching weights of almost 1.3 metric tons in the wild. At this size, only the most daring or desperate predators will attack them, and they are best observed from a safe distance. Because some people are desperate for a perfect picture or internet attention, they often get too close to these animals, and this can be a deadly mistake. In Yellowstone National Park between 1978 and 1992, 56 people were injured and 2 died from bison attacks. This just illustrates how dangerous they can be if you invade their personal space, and based on our history with these animals, they have valid reasons to attack us. The size and power of the American bison means that North America slots in at number 3, and the final 2 continents take the danger to the next level. Asia is the largest continent on Earth, so it makes sense that its landscapes and ecosystems differ greatly, and it's home to some of the largest herbivores on this planet. It shares many deer species with Europe, but it also has quite a few of its own, and in some of its deserts you'll find true masters of arid habitats. In Southeast Asia, you'll find the only tapir species outside of the Americas, and this species is easily the most striking. Thankfully, these giants are placid forest inhabitants, and to even find one of these animals in the wild is really quite a challenge. There are quite a few weird and wonderful distinctive herbivores in Japan and the Himalayas, such as the Japanese sero and the unusual tarkin. In some of the steppe ecosystems you can spot the prehistoric-looking saiga antelope, but to find most of the deadliest herbivores you'll need to look south. The Indian or greater one-horned rhino is the second heaviest rhino in the world, and it thrives in the national parks of India and Nepal. Of course, this isn't the only rhino in Asia, as there are two others, but these rhinos are much smaller and are also extremely rare. The Indian rhino has to face many threats in the form of tigers, leopards, and crocodiles on a daily basis, and this means that it always has to watch its back, and it's often easily aggravated. This is why attacks are relatively common, but human-wildlife conflict and human encroachment also play a massive role. Tragically, human-wildlife conflict is one of the most influential factors when it comes to herbivore attacks on humans, and it's the reason why the deadliest herbivore in Asia claims so many human lives. The Asian elephant is the largest living land animal in Asia, and it's also one of the most dangerous animals on the whole continent. Fully grown adults are pretty much safe from all predators apart from man, but their numbers have been decreasing rapidly since the 1980s. Because elephants travel great distances in a day and feed on a wide range of plants and crops, they often come into conflict with farmers. When the farmers attack the elephants, they will often retaliate, and because they are extremely intelligent animals, if they are treated badly by one human, then they are likely to attack another one when they see them. Human-elephant conflict claims the lives of around 600 people and 450 elephants each year, and a solution is needed desperately if we are to peacefully coexist. So even though it's not their fault, they are one of the deadliest large animals in the world to humans, but hopefully this won't always be the case. Africa is the land of giant mammals, so it makes sense that it's also home to some of the deadliest herbivores. Just like Asia, it has some rhino species, with the white rhino being the largest and most formidable. Rhinos rarely attack humans or other animals, as it's a very bad idea for any animal to approach a fully grown rhino looking for trouble. There are 3 herbivores in Africa that are really in a league of their own when it comes to danger, and it's really hard to pick just one of them to feature. The African buffalo has the endearing nicknames of Widowmaker or Black Death due to their deadliness, and they claim the lives of many predators and unfortunate humans. The other 2 species tie for the top spot, and it's estimated that they both claim the lives of around the same amount of people each year. The hippo is one of the most dangerous and unpredictable animals in the world, as one minute they're peacefully going about their day, and the next they are trying to ram your boat and throw you into the air. Today, it's a well-known fact that hippos kill more people than most African predators do, but what's often overlooked is how deadly the African elephant is. Just like its Asian cousin, the African elephant is a victim of human-wildlife conflict, and as it's the largest land animal on the planet, we are quite easy enemies to defeat when we are unarmed. The numbers of humans and elephants lost is hard to estimate, as a lot of incidents occur in remote areas and aren't recorded, but some experts believe that they claim the lives of around 500 people a year, which is around the same number as the hippo. Because of the combined danger of the African elephant and the hippo, I have slotted Africa in at number 1, but technically the Asian elephant claims more human lives, but you can complain about that in the comments if you wish to. Every single country around the world has at least one invasive species, with most countries spending millions or even billions to try and eradicate them. A non-native species doesn't have to be large or imposing to cause massive damage to an ecosystem, but in today's video I'll be focusing on the largest invasive species in the world. I'll be ranking each of the 7 continents by the largest invasive species that can be found there, but as this is quite a complicated topic, there are a few rules to go over. I'll be judging the animals based on their heaviest weights in the wild, and I won't be including livestock or domesticated animals. To be featured, the animal also has to be clearly invasive, as some non-native animals are classed as introduced as they have little effect on the ecosystem, and others are classed as naturalized as they've been in the area for many years and have become a part of the ecosystem, even though they aren't indigenous. This has also been an incredibly hard video to research, as it's hard to find examples of every single invasive animal on a continent, so if you feel like there are any large animals that I haven't mentioned, then let me know down below. In this video we'll be travelling around the world taking a look at a wide range of different animals, and we'll start off in the driest and windiest continent in the world. It shouldn't really be a surprise that we're starting off in Antarctica first, as it's one of the hardest places for any organism to establish themselves. You need to have certain adaptations to be able to deal with the freezing temperatures, and most animals would quickly starve. There aren't enough plants here year-round for herbivores, and unless you target penguins, seals, krill or fish, there's little prey here too. The only large animals that could really become invasive here are animals that are native to the Arctic, but it's extremely unrealistic to suggest that they'd be capable and willing to make the long journey south. Polar bears could become a real problem if they managed to make the long trip down to Antarctica, but there would be a lot of explaining to do if one of these apex predators suddenly showed up. On the islands surrounding Antarctica, there have been a few invasive species outbreaks, but it's still debated if these islands should be considered part of Antarctica or not. Famously, the South Georgia Islands had an invasive rat problem, and these rodents were threatening the native bird populations. After a massive and very difficult eradication project, South Georgia was declared rodent-free in 2018, and this has helped many of the native birds to bounce back. On mainland Antarctica, the only real invasive species are small insects, but it's possible that some larger organisms could invade in the future due to rising temperatures. One of the only ways that non-native species can make their way to Antarctica is on tourist and fishing vessels, and it's possible that the hitchhikers on these ships could establish themselves in the coming years. Rats and mice would really struggle, but it's possible that small populations could survive around research stations, and certain crabs, mussels, and barnacles could survive in its increasingly warming waters. Spider crabs have been invading Antarctic waters in recent years, and some experts believe that this will have massive negative effects on the native marine species. This means that the spider crabs would definitely qualify as an invasive species, but it's possible that these crustaceans are actually native. It's believed that they left Antarctic waters millions of years ago, but they are currently returning due to the warmer temperatures. For this reason, they can't really be classed as invasive, so it seems as though the only real invasive species on Antarctica are small insects. This means that Antarctica comes in at a sorry 7th place, but I guess being further down on this list is really a good thing. Africa is home to many competitive and brutal ecosystems, which is part of the reason why it has a relatively small amount of invasive species compared to other continents. Whether you're a predator or a herbivore, you have to compete with true giants and highly specialized animals, and large parts of the continent are also uninhabitable for most organisms. Even though Africa's freshwaters are extremely dangerous with many crocodiles, hippos, and predatory fish inhabiting them, some non-native fish have had some success here. Many different sport fish have been introduced over the years for fishing purposes, with many bass, carp, and catfish establishing themselves here. On land, most invasive mammals come in the form of domesticated animals and rodents, but there are a few large mammals that have been able to deal with all of the threats. The fallow deer is native to Eurasia, but today it's been introduced into many countries around the world. We have been introducing deer into different parts of the world for hundreds of years, and this is mostly for the purpose of sport hunting or food. Sailors would often introduce deer onto islands along trading routes so that they could harvest them as they travelled through, and colonizers would also introduce them so that they could hunt the same animals that they're used to back home. I've always thought that the latter is a very strange reason to introduce an animal, as you'd assume that one of the most interesting things about moving halfway around the world is that there are new animals and plants that surround you, but instead many of the settlers just introduced animals from back home. Fallow deer were introduced into South Africa in the early 1800s by the British, and this was originally for hunting purposes. Over the centuries, they have spread and become established in a few different regions, and this is bad news for the native grazers and the native plants. They've been so successful in some regions that there have been culls to try and control their population, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. There are a few other invasive deer species across Africa, such as the chital and the sika deer, but the European fallow deer is the largest. An extremely large fallow deer buck can weigh in at 150 kilograms, and this means that Africa is fit for 6th place. Asia is the largest continent in the world, but surprisingly, it doesn't have as many invasive species as you might think. Many Asian countries have invasive species that come from other parts of Asia, so it doesn't really make sense to include these animals in this video. The ecosystems that are usually more vulnerable to invaders are island ecosystems, and Asia's islands are no exception to this. Japan has many invaders that come from North America, including predatory fish, reptiles, rodents, and raccoons. On the Asian mainland, the landscapes vary greatly, but in most ecosystems there is a healthy amount of competition and apex predators. In some parts of Asia, you'll find giant brown bears and wolves. In others, you'll find lions and tigers. And on some of its islands, you'll find giant reptiles that reign supreme. On some parts of the continent, animals also have to deal with human encroachment and poaching threats. So if you want to survive here, you need to be very hardy. This is why there aren't many giant land animals that are invasive in the region, but in the water there are some giants that manage to survive here. The arapaima is one of the largest freshwater fish in the world, and it's native to the Amazon and Essequibo basins of South America. These bony-tongued fish are truly prehistoric, with some arapaima fossils found in Colombia dating back 23 million years. One of the reasons that they have been able to survive for this long mostly unchanged is because they are extremely adaptable, and they have a few adaptations that help them to survive in a variety of different habitats. These fish are able to breathe atmospheric oxygen, and this means that they can survive and hunt in waters where other fish would perish. They are also extremely muscular and bony fish, meaning that only the largest and most formidable aquatic predators can target them. I think it's safe to say that the laws regarding invasive species are pretty lax in some parts of Asia, as these fish have been imported into many Asian countries for aquaculture purposes. It's possible to visit fisheries that stock giant fish from around the world, and although it may seem easy at first, stopping these fish from escaping into the wild is surprisingly difficult. Flash floods and torrential rains are relatively common in tropical Asia, and this leads to the giant tropical fish in these fisheries escaping into the wild. Because the native fish aren't used to dealing with the arapaima, and because they are such efficient hunters, the native fish are easy prey, and they have negative effects on the native freshwater ecosystems by competing with and preying on native fish. The arapaima is capable of reaching weights of around 200 kilograms, meaning that Asia slots in at a close number 5. For hundreds of years, Europeans have been travelling around the world introducing non-native animals, but every now and again they would bring plants and animals home with them. This is part of the reason why Europe has so many invasive plants and animals today, but it also has plenty of animals that have become naturalised. In places such as the UK, there are many non-native deer, but some of them have been in the region for hundreds of years, and some of them were once native but had gone extinct. Today, there are many tropical birds that can be found in and around some of Europe's cities, and there are many fish and crustaceans that have arrived from over the pond in North America. To find some of the largest invasive species on the continent, you'll have to head over to Scandinavia, as there are 2 American invaders that have been very successful here. The North American beaver has a very healthy population in Finland, and today they even outnumber the native beavers in the country. Their introduction into Europe was essentially done by accident, because at one point in time the European beaver and the North American beaver were considered to be the same species. When the Eurasian beaver was struggling in Finland, beavers from North America were introduced, and they multiplied at an astonishing rate. I've covered this story in more detail in another video, so I'll leave that linked in the description below. In the early 20th century, white-tailed deer were also introduced into the country, and even though the odds were stacked against them, there were more than 100,000 of them in the country in 2021. I also covered this story in the same video I mentioned, so I'll keep it brief, but originally only 5 deer were introduced. The original population struggled at first, and it didn't look like they were going to survive, and eventually some of the deer escaped from captivity and the rest were released. Altogether, 3 does and 3 bucks found their way into the wild, and a decade later, another 6 deer were introduced. It's incredible that they managed to survive in the first place, but over the decades, 12 white-tailed deer turned into over 100,000. Their numbers have purposely been reduced through hunting in recent years, but the white-tailed deer is still the largest invasive species in Europe. The largest male bucks can reach weights of around 220 kilograms, meaning that Europe slots in at number 4. North America is home to a few different hotspots where invasive species thrive, with Florida being the most famous and obvious example. This is where you can find a variety of giant reptiles that really shouldn't be here, such as pythons, caiman, tegu, monitors, and even Nile crocodiles. It was big news when Nile crocodiles were found in the Everglades back in 2016, but since then there has been little evidence to suggest that there are any more out there. I was going to include the Nile crocodile as the largest invasive species in North America, but as there hasn't been any concrete evidence to suggest that there are still some out there, it doesn't seem appropriate to include them. Many other aquatic invaders also enjoy life in Floridian waters, such as the aforementioned arapaima and green anacondas. Just like the Nile crocodile, reports of these animals in Florida are few and far between, but they have definitely been here in the past. Across the northern parts of North America, wild boar and boar-pig hybrids cause massive problems, with the native predators being unable to deal with the sheer numbers of them. The largest invasive species in North America isn't a giant predatory reptile or a rampaging boar, as instead it's a herd animal from southern Africa. The gemsbok is a large antelope that's endemic to southern Africa, and it typically thrives in harsh and arid environments. They are perfectly adapted to these ecosystems, and in their natural habitat they take advantage of melons and cucumbers to get the water that they need. This means that if they were transported to another dry ecosystem in another part of the world, then they could take over, and this is exactly what happened in New Mexico in the 1960s. Initially, 93 were introduced into the state for hunting purposes, but today they have an estimated population of around 3,000 to 6,000 individuals. Part of the reason that they have been so successful is because of the lack of large predators, because even though cougars will regularly target their young in the state, they are used to dealing with many more predators across their native range. If New Mexico still had a healthy jaguar population, then things wouldn't be as bad, but instead gemsbok are putting serious strains on the ecosystem. They often outcompete the native desert herbivores such as pronghorns, bighorn sheep and mule deer, so really a solution is needed in the future to stop them from completely taking over. Gemsbok males can reach a maximum weight of around 240 kilograms, meaning that they are larger than all of the reptile invaders, and this slots North America in at third place. Most of Oceania was separated from the rest of the world for millions of years, and this means that invaders from other parts of the world can have a massive effect on their ecosystems. In countries such as Australia and New Zealand, there have been many extinctions that have been caused by humans and invasive species, but most of the invaders that cause the biggest problems aren't giants. Cane toads, stoats and cats have decimated many of the native species, and these animals were introduced after Europeans arrived in this part of the world. In the 1900s, in New Zealand, many different species of deer were introduced, including the largest deer in the world, the moose. Most of the deer species are still around today, but the last confirmed sighting of a moose in New Zealand was in 1952. Before the large mammal introductions, the only native mammals on New Zealand were bats, so of course their presence massively changed the ecosystem immediately. Over the years, Australia has had its own massive mammal introductions, including the giant and formidable water buffaloes. Water buffaloes were first introduced into Australia in the early 1800s for farming purposes, but when some of the settlements that they were brought to were abandoned, they soon took over the nearby swampland. Because of the lack of large land predators in Australia, they soon took over, with only the saltwater crocodile being able to take down fully grown adults. In 2022, it was estimated that there were around 200,000 of them in the country, and their presence has led to habitat degradation and water pollution. The water buffalo is the largest invasive species in Oceania, but the species that has been introduced is a domesticated species, so it doesn't qualify for this video. If we head out of the swamps and into the more arid areas of Australia, you'll find the second largest invasive species, and it's another mammal with a massive population. Dromedary camels were introduced into Australia in the 19th century by the British, and they were used as beasts of burden to carry important equipment around. When motorised transport became more accessible in the region, then there was no need for the camels, and many of them were set free. By 2008, it was estimated that there were over 1 million camels in the country, and even after culling attempts, their numbers remained strong. This is bad news for the native animals and plants, as they haven't evolved with these giant desert animals, so they are ill-equipped to deal with them. The dromedary camel has a maximum weight of around 690 kilograms, and this means that Oceania comes in at second place. Now I'm sure the final inclusion in this video isn't a surprise to many, as it's possibly one of the most famous invasive species stories in the world. I've covered this story countless times on the channel before, but if you're unaware, it all starts with a man called Pablo Escobar. He was a notorious and wildly successful drug lord, and he liked to spend his money in strange ways. He'd import animals from all over the world to keep on his estates, but after his death in 1993, some of his hippos that he had collected found their way into the wild. By 2007, these animals numbered around 16 individuals, but today their population is thought to number around 200. This is not only bad news for the native wildlife, but it's also dangerous for the local people, as hippos are some of the most aggressive and unpredictable animals on this planet. There have been multiple attacks in Colombia over the years, and millions of dollars have been spent trying to find a way to deal with the problem. Some of the hippos have been shot and some have been sterilized, but they still manage to increase in number. There are no animals in South America apart from man that can take down a fully grown hippo, and transporting the entire population is almost impossible. It seems as though this is going to be an issue for many years to come, and the hippo is easily the largest invasive species in the world. Hippos can reach a maximum weight of around 3.2 metric tons, and this means that South America easily takes the top spot. Most large wild animals roam across territories that can extend for miles, and others swim around the world in search of their desired prey. This is why many of us feel uncomfortable seeing animals in captivity, and thankfully over the years bans have been put in place to stop zoos from keeping certain animals in captivity. Of course, keeping animals in captivity is essential for the survival of some species, as some creatures are only clinging on because of captive breeding projects, and injured or ill animals can be successfully rehabilitated in captivity and released into the wild. Even though some zoos and aquariums have tried to multiple times in the past, there are certain animals that are impossible to keep in captivity. Certain animals have evolved to suit different ecosystems and have adapted to different climates and ways of life, and it's impossible for us to recreate some of these conditions in captivity. In today's video, we'll be going through just some of the animals that are impossible to keep in captivity, and the instances where keeping them in captivity was attempted and how they perished. To start off with, we'll be taking a look at arguably the most famous example, and to find the animal in question, we'll have to head into the world's oceans. The great white shark is one of the most formidable marine predators on the planet, being capable of targeting animals as large as elephant seals. They are only really bested by the mighty orca, and of course from time to time they do claim human lives. Unless you're an adrenaline junkie or a very brave diver, you'll likely never get to see this animal swimming in the wild. And this is despite the fact that many of us would like to if it was safe. This is why a few different aquariums have attempted to keep this giant fish in the past, but so far it's always ended in tragedy. At first, this might seem strange as there are plenty of sharks that have been successfully kept in captivity, including the largest fish in the world, the whale shark. To get an idea as to why they suffer in aquariums, all you have to do is look into their lifestyle, as a great white's life is in constant motion. To be able to breathe, the great white needs to be constantly moving, and this becomes stressful in the confines of even the largest aquarium. Great whites also migrate great distances to find new feeding grounds, and there is no way to replicate this in captivity. There is no need to keep this shark in captivity as it won't help to increase their numbers, and the intentions of the aquariums attempting to keep them are highly suspect. If you wanted more people to visit your aquarium, then one of the best ways to do so would be to keep one of these giants alive, but so far no aquarium has been able to do so for a long period of time. Back in 2016, a 3.5 meter shark only lasted 3 days in Okinawa Aquarium, but some other aquariums have had success keeping juveniles over a long period. The Monterey Bay Aquarium first attempted to keep great whites back in 1984, but this only lasted 11 days as the shark refused to eat and starved. Later on, between 2004 and 2011, 6 sharks were exhibited as part of Project Great White, with one of the sharks remaining in captivity for a record 198 days before being released. The The shark grew 43 centimeters and put on 45 kilograms in weight over this period, and the Monterey Bay Aquarium is still the only aquarium to keep great whites alive for more than 16 days. Thankfully, since 2011, the aquarium has not attempted to house any more great whites, and I think it's fair to say that these formidable predators should remain in the wild. Humans have been keeping gorillas in captivity for over 100 years, but if you look closely at these animals, you'll notice something interesting. None of the many gorillas kept in captivity are mountain gorillas, as past attempts have proven that it's impossible to keep them alive for long. If you want to see these primates with your own eyes, then you'll need a guided tour to track them down in the wild. And this can be difficult as there are only an estimated 1,063 remaining in the wild. Back in the 60s and 70s, there were multiple attempts to capture mountain gorillas to create a captive breeding population, and this often involved killing adults to take their young. In every single case, these young gorillas didn't last long at all, which is rather strange as other gorillas do relatively well in captivity. It's been suggested that mountain gorillas have a much more specialized diet in the wild which can't be replicated in captivity, and others believe that they die due to the stress of being taken from the wild. These mammals live a very quiet life in the misty mountain forests of Africa, and all the noises and changes to their life in captivity must be too much for them to process. Because they are endangered and because the past attempts went so badly, there haven't been any efforts since. And personally, I think it's a very good idea to leave these animals to have a peaceful life in the wild. If you've ever been to a zoo or an aquarium, you'll notice that none of the enclosures are suitable to house large whales. But some smaller whales such as beluga whales can survive in captivity, but it should come as no surprise that giants such as blue whales haven't been kept in aquariums. There is one large species of whale that has been kept in captivity for short periods, but in some cases they haven't survived the ordeal. Back in 1965, a grey whale called Gigi was captured and kept in captivity for research purposes, but died only 2 months later from an infection that was likely caused by her capture and stress. Later on in 1972, another whale cleverly named Gigi2 was captured, but this whale fared better, surviving for a year before being released into the wild. After a whale beached herself in California in 1997, she was quickly taken to SeaWorld San Diego. She was kept here for 14 months and was given the name of JJ, and eventually she was released into the wild after growing too large for the facilities. JJ remains the largest marine mammal to be kept in captivity, and at the time of her release she weighed 8.7 metric tons. One of the struggles with feeding a grey whale in captivity is mimicking how they feed in the wild, as they don't feed in the same way as most other baleen whales. They'll dive to the ocean floor and collect a large amount of sediment, and then they'll filter out crustaceans from the sediment. To mimic this behaviour in captivity, the keepers put fish at the bottom of JJ's pool, but eventually she would take food from the keepers directly. All of the grey whales that have been kept in captivity were juveniles, and it would be completely impossible to keep a fully grown grey whale in an aquarium for any amount of time. One of the reasons why grey whales have fared better than other whales is because they are relatively social animals, with some even approaching boats in the wild. This could mean that they can deal with the stresses of being around humans better than others of their kind, but these animals really have no place in captivity and belong in the wild. So even though juveniles have been kept in captivity for long periods, there is no pool in the world that would be suitable for an adult grey whale. Lemurs are quite easy to find in zoos around the world, and for some species it's essential for their survival. Madagascar is one of the most biodiverse islands on the planet, but unfortunately many of its species are threatened with extinction. Captive breeding is essential for many lemur species as much of their habitat has been destroyed, and this is especially the case for the Indri. The Indri is one of the largest species of lemur, reaching weights of up to 15 kilograms and measuring almost 1.2 meters with their legs fully extended. These primates are known for their haunting calls, which can be heard up to 4 kilometers away. Because the Indri is in peril with only 1,000 to 10,000 remaining in the wild, it would be great if a captive breeding population could be established so that they could bounce back. Unfortunately, this has proven to be an impossible task, with most individuals not lasting longer than a year in captivity. In the wild, they are found in small family groups and often jump from tree to tree at great height, and it's impossible to recreate their habitat and lifestyle in captivity. In the wild, they'll travel great distances to get the plants that they need and crave, and their highly specialized diet is almost impossible to recreate outside of Madagascar. Thankfully, they have thrived and even bred in semi-captivity across their native range, and hopefully this will help them to grow in number and return to their former strength. So even though some lemur species rely on captivity and captive breeding, for the injury it can be deadly, and if you want to see them, you'll have to head into the wilderness of Madagascar and listen for their strange calls. Leopard seals are some of the most mysterious and unnerving predators in our oceans, but the vast majority of people will never get to see one in the flesh. Some leopard seals have been kept in aquariums and zoos in the past, but this is usually the result of injured animals being found and rehabilitated. Back in 2007, a leopard seal named Casey called Taronga Zoo home, and this was after he was found washed up on a beach with a shark bite wound. He lived at the zoo until 2014, when they were forced to put him down following a prolonged illness. This shows us that it's possible to keep a leopard seal alive for a long period of time in captivity, but it's cruel, and unless the animal is unable to survive in the wild, it should never happen. Just like their fellow marine mammals, the orcas, they are extremely intelligent, and they have very specific dietary needs that can't be replicated in captivity. Most young leopard seals use their strangely shaped teeth to filter krill from the water, and once they get older, they'll target anything from penguins to sharks and even other pinnipeds. Of course, it's also impossible to recreate their natural habitat for the leopard seals that live in the Antarctic, but it isn't as bad for the leopard seals that travel around Australia and New Zealand from time to time. The extreme difficulty in keeping these animals happy and healthy is one of the main reasons why you won't see them in zoos and aquariums. But another very serious reason is their behaviour. In the wild, leopard seals are only really hunted by orcas, and they'll feed on and play with all other animals that they come across. They are known for being playful, but also have an aggressive and unpredictable nature, and tragically they have claimed the life of a human in the past. This means that not only is it cruel for the seal, but it's also dangerous for the keepers, which is yet another reason to leave them at peace in the wild. Because they are so mysterious, I'm sure most people would love to see these creatures with their own eyes, but this means travelling to the waters around Antarctica and braving the freezing conditions. Narwhals are among the most recognisable Arctic whales, with their giant tusks being matched by no other cetacean. These mammals sometimes share their icy homes with a close relative in the beluga whale, and in the past, these animals have even interbred and created hybrids. Belugas can be kept in captivity and are relatively easy to train, but the same can't be said for the narwhal. Back in 1969, the New York Aquarium tried to keep a young narwhal in a pool, and this was after the narwhal's mother was killed by hunters. The aquarium provided a beluga whale to act as the young narwhal's stepmother, but unfortunately it died after less than a month in captivity. A year later, Vancouver Aquarium became the second aquarium to attempt to keep these cetaceans, and at first, one male was transported to the aquarium. The male that was named Kilar Luguk wasn't alone for long, as he was soon joined by 2 females and 3 calves. At first, there was a lot of excitement as it gave people the opportunity to see an animal that most people never will, but it wasn't long until it all started going wrong. In less than a month, all 3 calves died, and by the end of the year, all of the aquarium's narwhals were dead. These tragic deaths were completely avoidable as there were demands from experts to release them back into the Arctic, but the aquarium director refused to set them free. There are many theories as to why it's impossible to keep narwhals in captivity, but most of them have something to do with their natural habitat and their unique anatomy. It's completely impossible to replicate the fresh, clean water of the Arctic in captivity, and the narwhal's iconic tusks are filled with millions of nerve endings, which help them to detect changes in water temperature, pressure, and particle gradients. This means that the warmer, dirtier water of an aquarium would stress them out, and they are known for being extremely sensitive animals. They have proven to be massively negatively affected by human noise in their natural habitat, and they usually thrive in large family groups. This shows us that an aquarium would be one of the worst places for a narwhal to be, so if you want to see these majestic creatures with your own eyes, then you'll have to head to the Arctic. The leatherback sea turtle is the largest living turtle in the world, and it's the largest non-crocodilian reptile. Some sources claim that they are capable of reaching a maximum weight of around 500 kilograms, and they can measure up to 2.7 meters in length. In the wild, they live a life that's different to all other turtle species, and they have a few distinct adaptations that aid their strange lifestyle. They are capable of diving to great depths in search of food, and their leathery skin helps them to withstand the pressure in deeper waters. They also have many backwards-facing teeth in their mouths and in their throats, and this helps them to dispatch and swallow their desired prey, which is usually jellyfish. Even though it's not completely impossible to keep these giants in aquariums, they don't do well in captivity and they are unable to reach maturity in an aquarium setting. Like the great white, these animals are constantly on the move in the wild, and in captivity they always bump into walls and injure themselves. Young leatherbacks are sometimes kept in research facilities for the start of their lives before being released into the wild, but it's pretty much impossible to keep a fully grown adult in captivity. Back in 2015, an injured leatherback was found off the coast of South Carolina, and he was then quickly transported to the South Carolina Aquarium. They found that the turtle that they named Yorkie had been eating plastic which it had mistaken for jellyfish, but thankfully after a quick rehabilitation period, he was released back into the wild where he belongs. Thankfully today, all of the leatherbacks in captivity are kept for conservation or rehabilitation purposes, and it's very unlikely that you'll be able to find one at your local public aquarium. So it turns out that these endearing reptiles are impossible to keep as they are so clumsy and massive, and if you manage to see one in the wild then you should count yourself very lucky.